Chapter 1810. The celestial realm isn't as peaceful as you think, the large black dog said with a serious expression. You're saying that there's some great karma that even celestial kings are swept into it? Ling Han asked. He was starting to understand what the large black dog was trying to say. The large black dog nodded. You're a promising child. Brat, you're finally enlightened. Ling Han also became serious, and he asked, what kind of karma could cause even celestial kings to fall? Strange, if there's such a great battle, why are so few people in the celestial realm aware of it? I'm not very sure, either. The large black dog scratched his head, looking unreliable again. Ling Han couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat, and he asked, then how did you come to this conclusion? The large black dog glanced at him disdainfully and said, of course it's from my memories. You clearly don't remember, so where did you get your memories from? Ling Han countered. You're so stupid. I clearly don't have any detailed memories, yet I still remember such a great karma. What does this mean? This is too important. The large black dog shook his head, looking very disdainful. Ling Han stroked his chin. Then what does this have to do with the topic you were talking about at the beginning? How is it unrelated? The large black dog scoffed. Even if you become a celestial king, you'll still be used as cannon fodder if you don't have enough strength. There are 9 heavens in the celestial king tier, and each step is like ascending to the heavens. A first heaven celestial king encountering a second heaven celestial king is like a severing mundane tier encountering a dividing soul tier celestial king. And if you want to become a 9th heaven celestial king, you have to polish every tier to perfection. Ling Han smiled and said, don't worry, I've cultivated every tier to perfection. He wasn't boasting, this was indeed the case. It's precisely because I know you'll be complacent that I'm reminding you. The large black dog looked as if he were too proud. Do you think striking the heaven and earth is perfect? Ling Han was shocked. This isn't perfect? No. The large black dog shook his head repeatedly. I have a memory. If you want to become a 9th heaven celestial king or a heavenly venerable tier, not only do you have to strike the heaven and earth to achieve Tao, but you also have to strike the 5th severance. 5th severance! Ling Han couldn't help but exclaim. Is that even possible? The 4th severance was the limit, and it was impossible to sever any further. Otherwise, that would only mean severing one's own life. This was something that everyone knew. Otherwise, if he could continuously sever his mundane, then wouldn't he be able to slaughter even dividing soul tier and immortal palace tier elites when he reached the 5th severance, the 10th severance, and the 100th severance? Since the levels were set up this way, there was naturally a reason for it. This is naturally extremely difficult. In fact, there have not been many people who have successfully walked this path since ancient times. However, as far as I know, if you want to reach the highest peak of martial art, you have to reach the 5th severance, the large black dog said solemnly. Striking the heaven and earth can only allow you to become a king among kings, but only the 5th severance can allow you to become one of the few ultimate elites in the world. This is only a possibility, but if you cannot reach the 5th severance, you will not even be qualified to push open this door. According to what the large black dog had said, celestial kings could only advance to the celestial king tier by severing heaven and earth. From ancient times until now, countless eras had passed. Even though severing heaven and earth was extremely difficult, there were still a ridiculous number of celestial kings. 5th severance, Ling Han said to the large black dog. 5th severance, the large black dog said with a nod. If you only want to become a celestial king, then you can continue on this path smoothly. However, if you want to become a 9th heaven celestial king, then this path will be incredibly bumpy and rugged. Moreover, it is not just the severing mundane tier. You have to achieve perfection in the dividing soul tier, immortal palace tier, and ascending origin tier. You have to surpass all other kings among kings. Only then will you be able to reach the pinnacle, and perhaps even surpass the pinnacle. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, just then, you said heavenly venerable. What heavenly venerable? Did Grandpa Dog say that? The large black dog asked with a confused expression. Had he really just blurted it out, or was he pretending not to know? Ling Han still remembered that Small Tower had once referred to the original master of the Black Tower as Heavenly Venerable. Was this a respectful title for a person, or was it a certain cultivation level? However, it seemed like Small Tower and the large black dog were unwilling to speak further on this topic, so he did not ask further. In any case, he would reach that kind of height one day. If he could not reach that level, what use was there in knowing? Why are you in such a hurry to tell me all this? Ling Han asked, changing the topic. I'm going to a place in a while. The large black dog looked into the distance, his eyes deep and profound. His expression was incredibly solemn. What place? Ling Han was astonished. The large black dog was in a hurry to tell him these things, as if he were making arrangements for his death. Could it be that the place he was going to was incredibly dangerous? An incredibly dangerous place, the large black dog said in a low voice, his voice filled with the solemnity of a warrior who would never return. Ling Han frowned and asked, "What on earth are you going to do there?" In the past. The large black dog recalled for a moment and said, I promised myself that I would steal Celestial King Ling Miao's underwear. Now that Grandpa Dog has returned to the Celestial Realm, it's time to fulfill my wish. At the end of his sentence, the large black dog's tongue was sticking out, and his eyes were shining. Ling Han kicked the large black dog. He had thought that this large black dog was being serious for once, but it turned out that he was still unreliable. Little Han, you're burning the bridge after crossing it. Grandpa Dog recognizes you as an ingrate, the large black dog said as he dodged. Ling Han only chuckled in response. They continued to advance. This plain was astonishingly vast. Moreover, there were many places that were riddled with dangers. Flipping over a random rock could cause a violent aura to transform into sharp arrows or flying swords. To say nothing of Ling Han, who was only at the second severance, even an immortal palace-tier cultivator could be killed. Thus, they were all very careful. Even when plucking some saintly medicines, they still had to observe them carefully. At Ling Han and the Empress's cultivation level, saintly medicines were used to accumulate origin power, while celestial medicines were used to comprehend regulations. However, saintly medicines weren't very useful either. They would only be effective if they consumed large amounts of them. A dozen or so days later, they finally exited the plain and arrived at the foot of a mountain. However, it wasn't that massive volcano. From here, that volcano was still far away, and it was unknown how far it was. At the peak of this mountain, there was a palace. Ling Han had learned about the Hidden Dragon Mystery Territory before, so he knew that it was called the Ascending Dragon Palace. The reason why this place was called the Hidden Dragon Mystery Territory was because of this Ascending Dragon Palace. It was said that this was one of the few buildings in the Hidden Dragon Mystery Territory that had not been destroyed, or rather, suffered relatively little damage. The Ascending Dragon Palace Hall should be a place that this Celestial King tier-level sect used to test their disciples. Moreover, it should be at the Severing Mundane tier. Because the formation was relatively well preserved, this place could still be used. If one could pass it, they would be able to obtain a reward. Previously, it was said that people who entered this place could occasionally obtain cultivation technique inheritances. 99% of them were obtained from the Ascending Dragon Palace. Otherwise, after so many years of cleansing, how could there be anything left? When they were on the plain, everyone's route was different. However, when they arrived here, everyone gathered from all directions. This was the only way to enter the deeper part of the Hidden Dragon's secret realm. At the same time, it was also a great land of opportunity. No one would miss it even if they passed by. In the distance, a large white rabbit held a carrot in its hands. Its ruby-like eyes stared at Ling Han, and its mouth was slightly open, exuding a sinister expression. If you find that the first 2 chapters are repetitive, please delete this book from the bookshelf and delete the cache. Then, you can add it back to the bookshelf, and you can read it normally. I'm very sorry for making everyone wait for nothing last night. There's a problem with the website, so I can't do anything about it. Chapter 1812. The Empress acted as if she hadn't heard him. In her eyes, Chen Zhaoyang, Luo Changfeng, or any other Tom, Dick, or Harry were all the same. She wouldn't take them seriously at all. The enemy only needed to be defeated. She let out a long cry that sounded like the cry of a phoenix. Then she raised her hand and slapped it toward Qian Zhaoyang. Humph! An annoyed expression appeared on Qian Zhaoyang's face. Although he was attracted by the Empress's exquisite beauty, he wouldn't be soft-hearted if they were to fight. At most, he would show some mercy and capture this delicate beauty alive. After that, he would do it with her. He stretched out a finger, and whang, the 10,000 swords rang in unison, turning into a torrential downpour that shot toward the Empress. The Empress's figure trembled, and she split into 9 doppelgangers. With another tremble, all 10 doppelgangers summoned 10 flame battle beasts. She had also learned the flame control technique. Although she didn't have the 9 heavens flame as her foundation, the fire element in this place was very close to her. Thus, she could easily summon 100 beasts. The 9 deaths heaven art and the 10 beasts technique. This was the combination of 2 celestial king tier techniques. How could he not be awesome? Hong, the 100 battle beasts roared in unison, transforming into ripples visible to the naked eye, causing the 10,000 swords to tremble. What level is the myriad sword art? The celestial techniques of 3-star forces, even if they were the core and top-notch ones, were only at the immortal palace tier. Was this also comparable to the 2 celestial king tier techniques? An utterly improbable thing. The 100 beasts rushed out to meet the 10,000 swords, while the 10 empresses all had proud expressions on their faces. They merely stood there and watched. Bang bang bang, the 100 battle beasts unleashed great destruction, biting down on the golden swords one by one, tearing them apart, and then flinging them down from the sky. The talisman markings on them had already been completely obliterated, and they had transformed into ordinary pseudo-divine metal. Although these battle beasts only possessed battle prowess equivalent to the peak stage of the 4th severance, and hadn't advanced into the king tier, how could it be that they weren't strong enough to deal with these swords? Meanwhile, Ling Han smilingly collected the scattered golden swords. These were all nourishment for the divine demon sword. Stop! Qian Zhaoyang's heart ached. Even though he was the holy son of a 3-star sect, he couldn't just have as much 1-star pseudo-immortal metal as he wanted. Creating these 10,000 swords had used up all of his savings. Otherwise, why not switch to 2-star pseudo-divine metal? Wouldn't that be even more powerful? It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that he couldn't afford it right now. Qian Zhaoyang charged toward Ling Han, wanting to stop Ling Han from taking advantage of the situation. But when he moved, the Empress also moved, blocking his path, and a great battle unfolded. Boom, the two of them clashed, and the Empress was clearly at a disadvantage. There was nothing that could be done. The Empress could only be invincible across a minor level. Even if she encountered a king tier at the early stage of the 4th severance, it would be difficult enough. What more when facing a king tier at the peak stage of the 4th severance like Qian Zhaoyang? If it weren't for the fact that the Empress was a supreme divine fetus and had her 9 doppelgangers to share the damage she received, or even to pass herself off as a king tier, she would have long since been defeated. Ling Han did not help. The Empress was also a prodigy of martial art, and such a powerful opponent could give her enough pressure to reach the peak stage of the 2nd severance even faster. As long as she could push open the door to the 3rd severance, then even if the Empress couldn't defeat a 4th severance peak stage king tier, she could at least be fearless. He chuckled as he collected the golden swords. Since Qian Zhaoyang had been released, he wouldn't be able to take any of them back. Qian Zhaoyang couldn't take it anymore. He pointed at the sword formation and shouted, "Withdraw!" Suddenly, the sword formation that filled the skies shrank. "Freeze!" Ling Han roared. For the sake of these pseudo-divine metal, he couldn't care less anymore. He activated his source power of water, and the surrounding temperature instantly dropped to rock bottom. Even those golden swords that were flying in the air were frozen solid, unable to move in the slightest. It was as if time had frozen, but in the next instant, these golden swords all fell to the ground. "Ling Han, you dare!" Qian Zhaoyang shouted harshly. These were all his savings, yet Ling Han had collected them all as if they were trash, causing his heart to bleed with pain. "Little Han, you're even picking up trash? I'm ashamed to be associated with you," the large black dog said in disdain. He really had to break into a run. With his despicable nature, how could he be so righteous? He had probably set his eyes on someone again and gone to do something bad. Qian Zhaoyang was even more furious. He actually said that this was trash and he was the real trash. He wanted to stop him, but he couldn't get past the Empress. Firstly, the Empress was indeed powerful, and secondly, facing the Empress' exquisite beauty, who could really be ruthless? They would always unknowingly show mercy. Ling Han smilingly put away all the golden swords. If he was lucky, the divine demon sword could possibly advance to the height of 3-star pseudo-divine metal. He smiled at Qian Zhaoyang and said, "Thank you for your generosity. Return my swords." Qian Zhaoyang was furious. He finally used a powerful move. He stretched out a hand and tapped in front of him, forming a circular symbol that was incredibly complicated. Then, a brilliant light shone, and it pushed towards the Empress. The Empress didn't dare to take this attack head-on. Its destructive power was too frightening. If she came into contact with it, her doppelgangers would definitely explode, and even if her main body had 9 doppelgangers spread out to receive the attack, she would definitely be severely wounded. One definitely couldn't underestimate the holy son of a great sect. Those that could sit in this position had all killed their way out of millions of prodigies, and all of them were extremely freakish. Ling Han gave a battle cry and used lightning flash, blocking in front of the Empress. He clenched his right fist, and the Shenyin source water transformed into a water dragon that twined around his fist and blasted towards that circular symbol. Seeking death. Qian Zhaoyang couldn't help but think, how could this symbol be simple? That was because it had been personally strengthened by an immortal palace tier elite of his sect, and its original form had been carved in his mind. Only then could he use it. Moreover, it would consume some energy every time it was used, and needed to be replenished regularly. However, its might was also extremely astonishing, and could practically be claimed to be the strongest in the Severing Mundane tier. You, a second Severance, also wanted to take it head-on. If that wasn't seeking death, what was it? Ling Han's fist landed on it. Pung! Suddenly, the wind and clouds surged. The mountain path in the surroundings was forcefully shattered, and as if they had lost gravity, the shattered rocks danced in the air. Multiple cracks appeared on the circular symbol, and then it completely shattered like porcelain, turning into innumerable small fragments that fell to the ground. Qian Zhaoyang was instantly tongue-tied. Just then, he had still been fantasizing the scene of Ling Han being blown to smithereens, but this scene caused his eyes to almost pop out. This was really too fantastical, wasn't it? What right did you have to shatter the foundation of regulations that an immortal palace tier great elite had planted? He naturally would not know that the Shenyin source water was Celestial King tier level, and if he had to make a comparison, it was equivalent to a Celestial King having planted regulations in Ling Han's body. Though he was limited by Ling Han's cultivation level, and was unable to unleash its full might, wouldn't he be able to suppress everything in the corresponding cultivation level? To compare the height of regulations with Ling Han, that was really a joke. From a certain aspect, even Celestial Kings could not compare to Ling Han, because Ling Han had grasped 2 kinds of source powers of heaven and earth. Ling Han's killing intent surged. He could be sure that the sneak attacker from before had definitely been instructed by Qian Zhaoyang. Thus, that sneak attacker was only a weapon, and the true perpetrator was Qian Zhaoyang. Facing this kind of person, there was naturally no need to be polite. Kill. Chapter 1813. Count yourselves lucky. Qian Zhaoyang waved his hand and was about to leave. He had acted against Ling Han because he wanted to claim credit from Zai Bingyun. By now, who did not know that Ling Han had greatly offended Zai Bingyun? However, aside from those who had witnessed it that day, there were different versions of the story circulating in the mouths of others. For example, Ling Han wanted to molest Zai Bingyun, or Ling Han said obscenities to Zai Bingyun in public, or even said that Ling Han had exposed something indecent to Zai Bingyun. In any case, whoever killed Ling Han would definitely be able to claim credit from Zai Bingyun. With Qian Zhaoyang's status, he did not think much of this. More importantly, This would allow him to establish a relationship with a celestial king tier force. Furthermore, what if Zai Bingyun caught up to him? That was hard to say. What was so bad about Chen Zhaoyang? He was a saint, after all. The reason why he was inferior to Luo Changfeng was because of the difference in level and resources, and not because his talent in martial art was weak. Thus, the moment he arrived, Ling Han couldn't help but order his subordinates to launch a surprise attack. He still wanted his face. How could a dignified saint personally attack someone weaker than him? But never had he imagined that not only had his subordinate been slaughtered, even he'd lost a precious sword formation. It was even to the extent that he'd utilized his trump card yet was still unable to suppress Ling Han. This caused him to be extremely depressed and lose the will to fight. What was there to fight for? He should just obediently search for his fortuitous encounter. Ling Han couldn't help but sneer. You still want to run? He opened his mouth and said coldly, Did you ask for my permission before leaving? Chen Zhaoyang was stunned for a moment, and then he laughed loudly with extreme disdain. If I, Chen Zhaoyang, want to leave, do you think you can stop me? I'm not interested in keeping you. I just want to send you on your way, Ling Han said indifferently. Impudent. Chen Zhaoyang rebuked coldly. Who is he? One of the heirs of the Chen Zhao family. But you? Penniless? In the celestial realm, talent was important, but without a good background, you were nothing. Otherwise, how could he be so much worse than Luo Changfeng? Ling Han's killing intent boiled. He wanted to kill the chicken to warn the monkey, to let everyone know what price they would have to pay if they dared to attack him. Although he was not afraid of strong enemies, he hated being ambushed from time to time. Killing you is as easy as killing a chicken, he said indifferently. It wasn't that killing Chen Zhaoyang was easy, but in Ling Han's eyes, Chen Zhaoyang was just a cat or dog. He wouldn't care even if he killed him, and he wouldn't even remember his name. Chen Zhaoyang was so angry that his whole body was trembling. He felt that Ling Han was too arrogant. Although he could not kill Ling Han, could Ling Han kill him? You might as well kill a chicken. I won't lower myself to your level. Chen Zhaoyang decided to ignore Ling Han. Once he left the Hidden Dragon Mystery Realm, he would try to break through to the Dividing Soul Realm. Once he reached the Dividing Soul Realm, no matter how monstrous Ling Han was, he would only be a weakling in front of a Dividing Soul Realm expert. He would only be slaughtered. Therefore, there was no need to rush. Besides, he didn't have any enmity with Ling Han, so there was no need for him to waste his time fighting him to the death. It's not up to you. Ling Han charged out and activated the 10 Beasts technique. Flame beasts appeared one after another, their roars like thunder. Right now, he could only perfectly activate the 10 Beasts technique in this secret realm. Since that was the case, he naturally had to make use of it more. Otherwise, after leaving, he would only be able to activate 2.5 war beasts, and their combat power would be far inferior. The appearance of the 10 war beasts was a force that made people despair. In this mystery realm, the severing mundane tier was the king. 10 battle beasts at the peak stage of the 4th severance, and at king tier at that. They were unafraid of death and unafraid of injury. Who would not be afraid of such a lineup? Even for kings among kings like Luo Changfeng and Zai Bingyun, they would have to advance into the 4th severance to be able to suppress them. If they were to face them now, they would definitely only be able to retreat. Chen Zhaoyang roared angrily, but he could only bitterly hold on against the 10 battle beasts. Cries of alarm rang out from the surroundings. Chen Zhaoyang was the heir of the Chen Zhao clan. Moreover, he was a king tier at the peak stage of the 4th severance. But now, he was actually being suppressed by 10 battle beasts? It should be known that this was only a secret technique that Ling Han had activated. He himself had not even made a move yet. Heavens, what kind of monster was this young man? No wonder he could still be alive and kicking after offending Zai Bingyun. This kind of strength was really unparalleled. Some people couldn't help but speculate. Could it be that Ling Han had really molested Zai Bingyun? Otherwise, why wouldn't such a prodigy be recruited into the Zai clan and properly nurtured? In the future, perhaps he would become another celestial king. Chen Zhaoyang was very pitiful. Who asked him to encounter Ling Han in this secret realm? Even if his true strength was above Ling Han's, he could only howl helplessly now. In fact, whether he could even keep his life was a problem. The people in the surroundings were all anxious and fearful. Some even secretly rejoiced that they had not made a move. Otherwise, they would have been doomed. A person that could offend a celestial king tier clan and still survive, was he someone that minor characters like them could deal with? It was better to leave it to Zai Bingyun to deal with herself. This kind of flattery was not something to be feared. Flattery would only lead to eternal damnation. Of course, there were also some people who were confident that they were stronger than Chen Zhaoyang and had more powerful trump cards, so they did not think that Ling Han could not be killed. Ling Han, don't go too far. Chen Zhaoyang was already in imminent danger. These 10 battle beasts were really too fierce, and had forced him into a dead end, and the detestable thing was that he could do nothing about it. Could it be that he was going to perish together with a beast? Then he would definitely be crucified on the pillar of shame in future, the #1 idiot in the world. Bully your sister, the one that I'm going to kill is you, Ling Han said angrily. Only you are allowed to make a move on me, how could there be such logic? Chen Zhaoyang showed a fierce expression. If he fought to the death with these 10 battle beasts, he would ultimately only die with hatred in his heart. Thus, he had to take a gamble. If he killed Ling Han, then the danger would naturally be resolved. As the heir of a 3-star clan, he naturally did not lack decisiveness. Having made up his mind, he immediately released a battle cry and charged at Ling Han. Peng, peng, peng. The encirclement of the 10 battle beasts forced him back. The strength of each battle beast was not inferior to his, and what kind of concept was 10 of them working together? Chen Zhaoyang did not even have the right to break out of the encirclement. He roared angrily, and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His blood and qi surged, and his battle prowess actually skyrocketed. This was him burning his origin energy, and he had obtained a temporary increase in battle prowess, but the duration was pitifully short. Peng, he broke out of the encirclement, and charged at Ling Han. The 10 battle beasts all launched their attacks, but Chen Zhaoyang did not even have to parry. Otherwise, if he was delayed, he would be surrounded again. Even his origin energy could not be burned just because he wanted to. If he could continuously use a powerful move that risked his life, would it still be called risking his life? Pooh. Chen Zhaoyang spat out blood again and again, but his figure still continued to accelerate, pouncing at Ling Han. He held his breath and wanted to kill Ling Han. As long as he killed Ling Han, he would be able to resolve this certain death situation. Chapter 1814. Chen Zhaoyang leapt forward and used his remaining strength to launch his final attack at Ling Han. This was really his final attack. He had expended far too much energy to break out of the encirclement of 10 battle beasts, and he had also been heavily injured. This was his final attack, and he would either succeed or die trying. The final attack of the heir of a 3-star force, and the hope of survival, was definitely not to be underestimated. Ling Han was unafraid. You are just a spent force. Do you think I will be afraid of you? He pressed out with a palm and grabbed towards Chen Zhaoyang. Chen Zhaoyang's attack came, and Ling Han unleashed 2 celestial techniques at the same time. The tide of the ages continuously corroded Chen Zhaoyang's attack. This was the most powerful regulation in the world before Celestial King tier. Otherwise, the Ding clan would not have coveted it so much. But because of the difference in cultivation level, this could not completely nullify Chen Zhaoyang's attack. But if Ling Han used the banishing technique again, the remaining might would not be of any use at all. Ling Han reached out with a hand, and just happened to grab Chen Zhaoyang's neck, as if he was grabbing a chicken. Poor Chen Zhaoyang. Though he was the heir of a 3-star force, because his injuries were too heavy, he could not even retaliate. His 4 limbs drooped, and he allowed Ling Han to carry him. This attack had not established its might, and he would really be defeated. Ling Han enough. With a cold humph, Chen Zhaotian stepped out. There was a cold smile at the corners of his lips, and he was practically overjoyed. Chen Zhaoyang was his competitor, but now he had been defeated by Ling Han in public, and had even suffered great humiliation. With such a stain on his name, this guy still had the face to sit in the position of heir? Even if Qian Zhaoyang was thick-skinned enough to refuse to give up his status as heir, he would still file a complaint and remove Qian Zhaoyang from his position no matter what. But if Qian Zhaoyang was killed by Ling Han, that would not do. At that time, even he would be blamed by the clan, wouldn't he? Watching as one of his clansmen was humiliated and killed, and he did not even say a word? How could such a person sit in the position of clan leader, and how could he be counted on to protect the interests of the clan? Thus, after enough excitement, Qian Zhaotian finally spoke. Ling Han ignored him. Putting aside Qian Zhaotian, even Fu Gaoyun would not be able to order him around. It all depended on his mood. If he was happy, then he would give him some face. If he was unhappy, then who would bother with him? Card with a twist of his hand, Ling Han snapped Qian Zhaoyang's neck. The laws formed by the nine heavens flame rushed into Qian Zhaoyang's sea of consciousness, instantly destroying his spirit. From then on, Qian Zhaoyang no longer existed in this world. You! Qian Zhaotian was enraged. He had not thought that Ling Han would really dare to kill the successor of a three-star clan. This guy knew that he had already offended a celestial king tier force, so he was completely unbridled now. Ling Han looked at him coldly and said, "What, you're not convinced? If you're not convinced, then come over. I'll teach you how to write the word, convinced." Though Qian Zhaotian's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, he did not dare to stubbornly retort. Even Qian Zhaoyang had been killed by Ling Han, so what was he? Strange, this guy clearly did not have such powerful strength previously, nor had he broken through to the next cultivation level, so why had he suddenly become so fierce? Lin Fang, Teng Sen, and the others had just arrived. When they saw that Ling Han was so domineering and Qian Zhaotian was so submissive, they all clicked their tongues in wonder. Who would have thought that a follower of the Fu clan would be able to subdue Qian Zhaotian? They, too, had the thought of killing Ling Han, but at this moment, they all discarded that thought. At least in this mystery realm, Ling Han could not be trifled with. Ling Han looked down on everyone and walked towards the summit of the mountain hand in hand with the Empress. He had fought 2 battles consecutively and killed 2 people consecutively. His domineering aura was already deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. Who would dare make an enemy of him? Some people, however, thought, you can be cocky now, but the moment you leave the mystery realm, you will have to show your true colors. A mere severing mundane tier without any background, and he actually dared to be arrogant? Ling Han and the Empress arrived at the summit of the mountain and saw a grand and majestic palace approaching them. Its exterior was inky black, and the outer walls were engraved with multiple dragons, but it did not give off a sense of solemnity. Instead, it was incredibly evil. In some legends, the black dragon represented evil and was the symbol of destruction. Ascending Dragon Palace. On the doors of the palace, 3 large words shone brightly, and there was even a kind of arrogance that could suppress all ages, vividly written on the paper. The doors of the palace were wide open, but there was no one inside. Logically speaking, Ling Han and the Empress definitely could not be the first batch of people to come here. Then what about the people who had come here before? The 2 of them exchanged a look and stepped through the doors. They only felt a completely irresistible force assault them and had no choice but to let go of each other's hands. Then, with a shake of their bodies, they each entered into a sealed stone room. This did not seem to be strange at all. It was very obvious that this was a test. Ling Han was already mentally prepared. It was probably just a stone man, a metal man, or something like that would run out and fight with him. If he won, he would pass the test. Couldn't they be a little more creative? Just as he was grumbling, 3 streaks of light converged and then condensed into a human figure. Its face could not be seen clearly, but in any case, it looked like a human. Its body was about 3 meters long and appeared very thin and tall. "Young man, why do you cultivate?" this human figure asked as if it was talking about family matters. Ling Han made an sound. This was a little unexpected. He had already been prepared for a great battle and had not thought that this would actually happen. Why did he cultivate? Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "In order to obtain powerful strength, I can choose my own path, be able to protect the people around me, and be able to walk with my back straight." This answer conforms to the norm, the light figure evaluated. The shadowy light figure evaluated, it's one thing to say, but your Tao heart is truly stable. You can withstand the loneliness of cultivation. Ling Han nodded. Then let's interrogate your Tao heart. Next, you cannot make a sound. If you make a sound, it means that you have failed, the light figure said, and then pointed a finger at Ling Han. Ling Han only felt that his surroundings had suddenly become pitch black. He had lost his 5 senses and could not see, hear, or feel anything. This was an extremely frightening experience. He was alive, but it was no different from being dead. Fortunately, this was not the first time that Ling Han had experienced such an experience. He tried to ignite the 9 heavens flame, but he suddenly discovered that he had lost connection with the 9 heavens flame. Could it be that his divine spirit had been deceived? Otherwise, it was impossible that he could not sense the 9 heavens flame. This was his source power. If his divine spirit had been deceived, then time would have lost its meaning, and even a moment could be extremely long. This was an interrogation of his Tao heart. Could he guard GMO? Ling Han was silent, and he carefully experienced this endless coldness where he had lost his 5 senses. He suddenly discovered that comprehending Tao under such circumstances was actually a rather good experience. The prerequisite was that he would not be driven crazy by this death-like feeling. Only with a firm Tao heart could he face everything head-on. Chapter 1816. The shadowy figure did not answer and only pointed at Ling Han. Ling Han felt his vision blur, and the space around him suddenly changed. When it stabilized, he had already appeared in a different place. This was a peach forest that stretched on for an unknown length. Now, the peach blossoms on the trees were in full bloom, and it was a patch of pink. The fragrance wafted in the air, making one feel relaxed and happy. In the celestial realm, all plants developed in the direction of big, and there were trees that were tens of thousands of feet tall. Moreover, this was only considered a normal size. The real big guys could even reach 1,000,000 feet tall. But here, the size of the peach trees was very normal, no more than 6 feet tall. Petals fell all over the ground, and it was astonishingly beautiful. Ling Han first sensed the state of his body, and after confirming that this was a real scene, he walked with large strides. He did not have a goal and walked casually. In this place, he could not distinguish north, south, east, and west at all. After walking for a while, he stopped. He had a feeling that if he kept walking like this, he would never be able to walk out of this place. The shadowy figure said that if he passed the second test, he would be able to obtain another good fortune. Was this it? Of course, a good fortune would not be given to him for free. This was a test. Ling Han leaped up and looked around, but all he could see were still patches of peach trees, and it was a patch of pink. It was as if this was the world of peach trees. His eyes twitched slightly. Although the peach trees were planted very neatly, there was a protrusion in front of him, and one of the peach trees was crooked. The originally neat and tidy trees suddenly became crooked. This would drive someone with obsessive-compulsive disorder to death. Ling Han flew over, and with that as the center, he quickly found another crooked peach tree. He continued to find this kind of abnormality. His figure flew, but after a whole 2 days, he was still wandering around in this seemingly endless peach forest. This isn't right. Ling Han shook his head. The passage to leave, or rather, the place of opportunity, could not be so simple. He landed and sat cross-legged, and the path that he had walked previously appeared in his mind. At his level, the path that he had walked was naturally like a brand. Instantly, a picture unfolded in his mind, and the path was astonishingly complicated. There must be a pattern, Ling Han said to himself. He pondered for a moment, and then directly entered into the Black Tower. He started to make predictions under the reincarnation tree. One day later, he opened his eyes and smiled. He was confident that he had found the right path. Husband, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden walked over. Now, she was the only one left in the Black Tower. Even the bootlicker Azura Demon Emperor had been thrown to the secondary city of Black Moon by Ling Han, so she naturally felt lonely and bored. Ling Han comforted her. There was nothing he could do about it. She had not advanced into the severing mundane tier, so she was completely unable to move about in the hidden dragon mystery realm. After exiting the Black Tower, Ling Han strode forward. He already had a card up his sleeve. After walking for a while, he saw a person with fluttering red clothes in front of him. Her back view was infinitely beautiful. It was definitely the most exquisite masterpiece of the heavens. "Wife?" he cried at once. The Empress stopped and turned around. A bright smile appeared on her proud and exquisite face, instantly causing this peach forest to lose its color. Under her exquisite beauty, everything else paled in comparison. Ling Han walked over, and the Empress walked up to receive him. The two of them embraced each other. Though they had only been separated for a few days, it was like a lifetime had passed. In a certain sense, it was indeed so. Their divine sense had been isolated by some kind of method, and they could ignore time and focus on comprehending Tao. Normally speaking, they would need a few million years to complete this step. Thus, what seemed like a few breaths' time was indeed a few million years to their divine sense. Just like comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree, though one day was equivalent to 100 years, their divine sense had indeed lived through 100 years. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. The two of them immediately began to kiss passionately, absorbing that familiar scent from each other. The Empress raised her head and said in an extremely domineering tone, "You are not allowed to leave me for so long again." Ling Han said seriously, "Don't worry. Even if we are separated by thousands of mountains and rivers, or several epochs, I will still find you." Only then did the Empress smile sweetly, her beauty indescribable. The two of them walked hand in hand. Speaking of which, it was quite a coincidence. The Empress hadn't found the way out of this place, but rather just happened to be walking in the vicinity, which was why she had bumped into Ling Han. This could only be said to be telepathic. Perhaps her comprehension ability wasn't inferior to Ling Han's, but without the help of the reincarnation tree, how could she compare to Ling Han? The two of them continued walking, and it wasn't long before they saw another woman with an enchanting figure appear in front of them. Her figure was close to perfect, but compared to the Empress, it was a completely different type. The Empress was domineering and noble, and even just looking at her back would cause one to feel admiration, wanting nothing more than to kneel on the ground and lick her toes. But this woman was different. She gave off an incredibly enchanting feeling. With every step she took, her full bottom would sway slightly. Clearly, it wasn't very wide, but because her waist was too slender, this kind of movement became very wide. As she swayed left and right, the fabric would tighten around her full bottom, completely highlighting the shape of half of her bottom. It was incredibly enchanting and would cause one's lust to soar. This kind of seductive beauty belonged to the category that men would associate with bed at a glance, and would want to have sex with at all costs. Without looking at her face, Ling Han felt that the world was so small, and everything was so coincidental. Bewitching maiden row. "Husband, go." The Empress's eyes immediately lit up. She had long since made up her mind. If she could woo him, she would, and if she couldn't, she would forcefully abduct him. No matter what, she couldn't allow this 9 revolutions charm physique to fall into the hands of others. As for whether bewitching maiden row was willing or not, and what she was thinking, the Empress didn't care at all. Everyone in the world were ants, and she was the high and mighty Empress, so did she need to care? "Brat, go." Small Tower actually joined in the fun as well. "Go, your sister. If you want to go, then go." Ling Han was determined not to comply. Though beauties were pleasing to the eye, if he wanted to marry them, then the more definitely wasn't the better. He felt that he already couldn't love all of these beauties by his side, so how could he have any more love debts? Ahead, bewitching maiden row had also sensed them. With the sensitivity of their divine sense, there was no need to use their eyes to sense them. Immediately, a hint of wariness appeared in her eyes. Ling Han and the Empress were both too strong, and she could only rely on herself here. If they wanted to use force on her, it would be very disadvantageous for her. "So it's the two of you?" Bewitching maiden Rose smiled sweetly. Even if she was in battle, she would still smile sweetly like this. The Purity sect cultivated charm techniques, and even in death, they would still smile. "Call me big sister," the empress said in displeasure. Bewitching Maiden Ro couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Her smile was slightly awkward and she said, "This little sister is really—" Her eyes swept over the empress, and her small cherry mouth suddenly gaped wide. Combined with her exquisite and seductive expression, it would cause some kind of unbearable thought to arise in men, and keep wanting to stuff some kind of thing into her small mouth and fill it to the brim. How could there be such a beautiful woman in this world? More refreshing reading on mobile. Chapter 1817. Beautiful women were always conceited. This was especially so for a stunningly beautiful woman like Bewitching Maiden Ro. She was confident that her beauty was unparalleled in this world. Asking her to admit that she was inferior to another woman in terms of appearance was practically a fantasy. But when it came to the Empress, Bewitching Maiden Ro did not have the slightest bit of confidence. She had to admit that the latter was much more beautiful than she was. It wasn't a slight advantage, but a crushing one. She couldn't find any excuses. For example, her breasts weren't as perky as his, her butt wasn't as perky as his, and her waist wasn't as slender as his. Everything about the Empress was perfect. Moreover, her aura was too powerful. She was as noble as a goddess, and others could only look at her from afar, not daring to profane her. Big sister?" Bewitching Maiden Ro involuntarily called out, but the moment she said big sister, she hurriedly shut her mouth. How could she compromise? The queen nodded and said, "Since you've called me big sister, you're a member of the Ling family from now on." Hey, you're talking about yourself too much." Bewitching Maiden Ro hurriedly waved her hand and said, "This lady, call me big sister," the Empress corrected. Bewitching Maiden Ro couldn't help but feel speechless. Even if you were as beautiful as a celestial maiden, you still couldn't be so unreasonable. Ling Han laughed and said, excuse me. Bewitching Maiden Ro was already very wary of the two of them in the first place, and now she was even more intimidated by the Empress's stunning beauty, so she naturally did not want to travel with the two of them. When she heard this, she made a gesture to make way for them. Ling Han pulled the Empress away, and the Empress grumbled, "Husband, she has the 9 revolutions charm physique, so you can't let her benefit others." With her aggressiveness, these words were not spoken softly, and were enough for Bewitching Maiden Ro to hear them clearly. Bewitching Maiden Ro almost stumbled and fell to the ground. Her pretty face twitched slightly, and she was completely at a loss for words. Ling Han could only laugh dryly at her and pull the queen away. Bewitching Maiden Ro couldn't help but spit. "None of my business." Ling Han only felt wronged. He hadn't even thought about it. How was it that he was the one being called a pervert? "You witch, do you believe that I won't slap your butt?" He couldn't help letting out a hiss. Unknowingly, he was once again influenced by this witch's charm arts. Indeed, this seductive woman's charm was inferior to the Empress, but it was a subtle influence. Every time he saw her, his self-control would weaken slightly. Vixen, what a vixen! Ling Han had originally wanted to clear his name, but now he didn't even have the mood to speak. He grabbed the queen and ran. As she watched them walk away, a thought flashed through Bewitching Maiden Ro's mind. She had already wandered in this place for more than 3 days, but still had not found a way to leave. Although immortals had an unlimited lifespan, it couldn't be wasted. Furthermore, the Hidden Dragon Mystery Realm would only be open for about 10 years. By then, the volcano would have calmed down again, and this place would once again be filled with killing intent. Her intuition told her that Ling Han had found the way out. Although she also felt that such a judgment was a little too rash, since they couldn't find the way out, why not follow someone else? With this thought in mind, she followed behind Ling Han and Li Xiandao. The distance was quite far, but with the range of her divine sense, it was impossible for her to lose them. Half a day later, a person suddenly walked out from the side. "Oh, Fairy Ro!" That person cried out in pleasant surprise. This person was Beiyu Xiong. Bewitching Maiden Ro nodded at the other. The motto of the Purity sect was that if it could be resolved with words, then definitely not with force. However, she did not stop walking. This pause might allow Ling Han and Li Xiandao to walk out of the range of her divine sense. Beiyu Xiong hurriedly followed. Faced with an exquisite beauty like bewitching Maiden Ro, there was probably no one who could harden their heart and lose their temper. Things were really coincidental. Not long after, they bumped into another person. This time, it was Lin Fong. She had also passed the previous test and was able to enter into this place. However, she couldn't find the way out no matter how she walked. Now that she had bumped into others, she suddenly felt the enthusiasm of meeting an old friend in a foreign land and started walking together with them. Then they encountered Chen Zhao Tian, as well as Ting Senator. The scale was getting bigger and bigger. Ling Han discovered that there were more and more people following behind them, but he did not deliberately take a crooked path. He believed that if this opportunity belonged to him, then no one could possibly snatch it away from him. He was just that confident. His mind became clearer and clearer. After walking for a while longer, the area ahead suddenly widened up, and a peach tree appeared. It was not unusual for there to be peach trees here, but this one was slightly different, because it was growing all alone. There were no other peach trees in the surroundings, and this peach tree was also very old. There was a withered hole in the trunk that was big enough for a person to pass through. If it had been just a little bit off, the entire tree would have snapped. Even now, it was only connected to a sliver of skin, making one feel uneasy just looking at it. Was this the place? Ling Han was surprised. From the result of his deduction, this should be the end point, or the location of the great opportunity, but he had not thought that it would actually be a peach tree. However, this was obviously different, and was enough to prove that his deduction was correct. But what did this mean? Luo Changfeng was holding a map in his hand, but this was definitely not ordinary. There were two spots of light flashing on it, one in a fixed position, while the other was moving. The spot of light that did not change its position was the destination, and the other spot of light represented his present location. Tens of billions of years ago, Lord Sect Master entered this place and discovered the Heavenly Tao Source Stone. At first, he wanted to take it away, but later discovered that the Heavenly Tao Source Stone had already fused with the general situation of this place, so he gave up on this plan. After so many years, the Heavenly Tao Source Stone has already evolved into the Heavenly Tao Jade, and this time is the time to seize it. Lord Sect Master is very kind, and has bestowed a treasure upon me, telling me to follow the map. This time, the Heavenly Tao Jade will definitely be mine. However, the ancestor of the Ziyun clan also entered this place at the time, and even had a fierce battle with Lord Sect Master over divine metal, so he definitely knows that there is a Heavenly Tao Jade in this place. This kind of treasure does not have any benefits for those above dividing soul tier, so Lord Sect Master did not personally move, and only sent me in alone. This is a test for me. So, I definitely have to obtain the Heavenly Tao Jade. Luo Changfeng's eyes lit up. The Heavenly Tao Jade can mend the damage of Heavenly Tao, make up for the imperfections before the severing mundane tier, and become a king among kings, and for me, the Heavenly Tao Jade can give me a sliver of a chance of reaching the fifth severance. Fifth severance, a domain that even Lord Sect Master has not touched upon. Luo Changfeng's hand that was gripping the map was trembling slightly. Fifth severance, even in celestial king tier forces, was only a legend. Looking at the innumerable holy sons and holy daughters, generation after generation, who had reached the fifth severance. As far as he knew, not one. To say nothing of these ordinary holy sons and holy daughters, even those holy sons and holy daughters that had become celestial kings later on had not reached the fifth severance. This was a forbidden area, and even celestial kings could only look up to it. But the Heavenly Law Jade can defy the heavens and change fate. He was a king among kings, and as long as he refined the Heavenly Tao Jade, he would be qualified to attempt for the fifth severance. Although he was only qualified to increase the possibility by a tiny bit, perhaps from 0 to 1 in 10,000, it was at least a glimmer of hope. The only one I have to worry about is Zai Bingyun. She has definitely come for the Heavenly Tao Jade as well. Luo Changfeng murmured as he looked at the map. The two light spots on the map had already overlapped. The road ahead suddenly became clear, and Luo Changfeng's expression also became infinitely interesting. Damn, why are there so many people? Chapter 1818. Luo Changfeng was dumbfounded, feeling an indescribable pain in his balls. How the hell did you get out of this heaven-sealing peach blossom trap? He had the map passed down by the Celestial King, so he could follow the map. Even so, he still spent some time, but you guys actually arrived earlier than me. Is there any justice left? You guys are stronger than immortal kings. If it was just 1 or 2 people, it might be luck or coincidence. But there were at least a dozen people here. How could it be a coincidence? Luo Changfeng's mouth was wide open. He felt as if the world had turned dark, and he almost fell to the ground. Shwa! The peach blossoms moved, and a beautiful figure appeared. That was Zai Bingyun. Her expression was not much better than Luo Changfeng's. At first, she had been confident, but now, her expression had become incredibly marvelous. Her small cherry mouth was wide open, and she was completely dumbfounded. What's happening? What's happening? Bewitching Maiden Ro, Beiyu Xiong, and the others were all discussing spiritedly. This place was definitely out of the ordinary. A spacious area, an old peach tree. In addition, the shadowy light figure had once said that there was a great opportunity here. Naturally, everyone was interested. Where is the opportunity? Is it this peach tree? Luo Changfeng calmed his mind. Fortunately, the heavenly Dao Jade had not been taken away yet. There was nothing to be afraid of. He strode forward in a domineering manner, causing the people in front of him to involuntarily make way for him. At first, he had just advanced into the 3rd severance, but he had previously received a great boost, reaching the peak stage of the 3rd severance. Though he had not advanced into the 4th severance, his natural talent as a king among kings was enough to defeat even a king tier at the peak stage of the 4th severance. In here, he was invincible, aside from Zai Bingyun, who could compete with him. The 2 great celestial kings had only sent the 2 of them over, and there must be a reason for it. It was nothing more than to let them start a competition, and the others would only serve as foils. At this point, Ling Han was a little puzzled because he had no idea where the so-called great opportunity was. Seeing Luo Changfeng coming over, Ling Han's heart skipped a beat and he stepped back a little. The other party was the holy son of a celestial king tier-level sect, and there had been 3 celestial kings that had engaged in a fierce battle in the hidden dragon mystery realm to fight over divine metal. Perhaps the holy son had been personally instructed by the celestial kings, and thus knew how to retrieve the fated opportunities. Since he didn't know how to do it, he would let the other party do it. Seeing this, Luo Changfeng could not help but reveal a sneer. He thought that Ling Han was afraid of his aura, which was perfectly normal for him. How could a mere king rival a king among kings? He's an emperor. On the other side, Zai Bingyun also walked over gracefully, her bearing moving. But Beiyu Xiong, Qianzhao Tian, and the others could not help but stare at her bottom, a scene rising up in their minds. And so white and round. Zai Bingyun was suddenly enraged, and when her gaze swept over Ling Han, her slender hand involuntarily trembled, and a strong killing intent surged in her. However, the heavenly Dao Jade was too important. It concerned whether or not she could create history and become the only 5th severance monarch tier. So now, everything else had to be put aside, and snatching the heavenly Dao Jade was the most important thing. She did not intervene, and let Luo Changfeng do whatever he wanted. In any case, there was still some distance to go before she could seize the heavenly Dao Jade. Luo Changfeng had no distractions in his mind, and he expected that no one would dare to disturb him right now. Before long, that withered hole of the old peach tree emitted a faint light, and a row of stone steps actually appeared. Furthermore, they did not go all the way down but towards the skies. But after taking a few steps back, they clearly did not see any stone steps in the air. This was the means of a celestial king. If they, severing mundane tiers, could resolve it, then they would have to find a piece of tofu and knock themselves to death. Luo Changfeng smiled. This was actually a restriction. If one wanted to resolve it normally, it would be impossible without several tens of thousands of years of effort, but he had received the teachings of a celestial king, so it was a piece of cake for him. His eyes swept over, slightly smug, but when he saw the Empress, his breathing involuntarily paused. How could there be such exquisite beauty? Get lost. Zai Bingyun charged over, her expression as cold as ice as she rebuked coldly. She did not move. Even if she had also reached the peak stage of the third severance, she still did not have the confidence to kill Ling Han in a short period of time, and the heavenly Dao Jade was too important. She definitely could not waste the slightest bit of time. She took the lead and leaped into that tree hole, ascending the steps. Your bottom is a little big and affects your beauty. Behind her, Ling Han's evaluation rang out, almost causing her to tumble down. I'll endure it. Zai Bingyun gripped the hilt of her sword. She swore that when she obtained the heavenly Dao Jade, she would definitely kill Ling Han. This time, she had come prepared and had a powerful weapon on her. There was definitely no one in the severing mundane tier that could match her, and only Luo Changfeng similarly had the means of a celestial king, and could become her only worthy opponent. Only now did Luo Changfeng come to his senses. Though the Empress was so beautiful that his heart throbbed with excitement, and he had the thought of marrying her, between beauty and his ambition of becoming an emperor, he still decisively chose the latter. He steeled his heart and entered into the tree hole. There was only one heavenly Dao Jade, and if he was too slow, it would be gone, but though there was only one Empress, she would not fly away. Ling Han held the Empress's hand and entered into the tree hole one after another. Behind them, bewitching Maiden Ro, Qianzhao Tian, Teng Sen, and the others entered one after another. Adding all of them together, there were a total of 14 people. The stairs in the tree hole ascended step by step. At the beginning, the surroundings were still pitch black, but very quickly turned into a white space. High up in the distance, a mountain was wreathed in mist, like a celestial realm. Zai Bingyun took the lead, and Luo Changfeng followed closely behind. Ling Han and the Empress also used their movement techniques, their figures as if they were flying. Behind them, the others also lined up in a long line. Not long after, the stairs were completed, and they, too, had arrived at that mountain. This mountain was very strange. It was unknown where its roots were, because it could not reach the bottom. All around, there were churning clouds and mist, blocking their vision, and also making it difficult for them to reach it. At this time, Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng both stopped in their tracks. They had only heard the Celestial King give a rough explanation. This was the place where the heavenly Dao Jade was nurtured, but as for the specific location of the heavenly Dao Jade, they actually did not know either. Now that they had reached this place, they were on the same starting line as the others. What exactly is this great opportunity? Lin Feng asked. She was also a great beauty, but there was bewitching Maiden Ro, Zai Bingyun, and even the Empress here, whose beauty was unparalleled, so she did not stand out at all. Everyone shook their heads. They were all extraordinary geniuses, and their reactions were sharp, which was why they had not stepped into the trap and managed to reach this place. The shadowy figure of light had said that there was a great opportunity here, so everyone was naturally tempted, but what exactly was this thing? Ling Han was also very curious. At first, he had thought that Luo Changfeng and Zai Bingyun had really come here by pure coincidence, but later, when he saw how familiar the two of them looked, he had a guess. They had come precisely for this great opportunity. Being able to cause the holy sons and heirs of two celestial king-tier forces to specially rush over, the value of this opportunity was definitely beyond imagination. Could it be the heavenly Dao Jade? Small Tower suddenly spoke up. Cell phones read more refreshingly. Chapter 1820. The Empress flew into a rage. One of the things that she could not tolerate the most was criticism of her appearance. Humph. She humphed, her domineering aura radiating. Am I poisoned? Why do I suddenly feel that this woman is better? A dwarf suddenly exclaimed, blinking his eyes in disbelief. I also seem to feel that she is quite good. Heavens, I must have been cursed. The 7 dwarves all paled in shock. This woman was poisonous and actually made them feel good. What the hell? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly. The Empress's beauty was indeed irresistible. Even these people with different aesthetic standards were forcibly pulled straight. He thought for a moment and asked, "Who are you people? Can I go to your place as guests?" The 7 dwarves were still gossiping about the Empress, glancing at her again and again. The more they looked, the more they felt that the Empress was astonishingly beautiful. Then, when they looked at each other again, they all bared their teeth, wondering why their companion was so ugly. "We are the warriors of the Garuru tribe," a dwarf said, his expression filled with indescribable pride. There was the heavenly Tao jade here, though they did not know its exact location, and there was a group of natives living here, so perhaps they would know some clues. Ling Han's divine sense swept over. Though these dwarves had some cultivation, they were only in the shattering void tier, and their strength could not be any lower. Perhaps the cultivation system here had not taken shape, but in terms of spiritual chi alone, they were actually not weak. "If you want to be guests, that's fine, but don't think of stealing our treasures," a dwarf said. "That's right, you humans are the worst. According to the records of our ancestors, you people have done many bad things." These dwarves were all talking at once, all saying how greedy outsiders were, and that they would not have a good ending like that. The Empress was proud and impatiently said, "Hurry up and lead the way." Being rebuked like this, the 7 dwarves all lost their temper and obediently led the way at the front. Ling Han couldn't help but snicker internally and followed behind with the Empress. Meanwhile, bewitching Maiden Ro and the others followed even further behind. The group walked one after another, and after walking for about an hour, a large piece of flat land appeared in front of them. There was a village there, and light smoke could be seen rising. This is the Garuru tribe. When the 7 dwarves returned with the 2 giants, a large number of dwarves suddenly rushed out of the village and surrounded Ling Han and the queen, their faces full of disgust. "Too ugly. This is the legendary greater human. My eyes are going blind. I definitely won't be able to eat today. Heavens, how can there be such an ugly person?" These dwarves all exclaimed in shock, not the slightest bit afraid. Ling Han and the Empress were both powerful severing mundane tier elites, and were a little dazed. However, the Empress's beauty was all-encompassing. Not long after, they all stared with wide eyes, and began to admire the Empress's exquisite beauty. Ling Han coughed and said, "Can we walk around here?" "You can't, but she can." These dwarves all pointed at the Empress, extremely biased. The Empress was proud, and began to lead Ling Han to walk around the village, and bewitching Maiden Ro and the others also appeared one after another. They also had the same idea as Ling Han. These natives could possibly know some clues about the great fortune. They wanted to enter the village, but the Empress was the Empress, and these people were only these people. "Greater human, you are forbidden from entering our sacred village." Suddenly, over a dozen dwarves blocked bewitching Maiden Ro and the others, all raising the staffs in their hands and aiming them at them. This seemed to be a weapon. Previously, 7 dwarves had targeted Ling Han and the Empress, but its exact might was unknown. Qian Zhao Tian showed an expression of disdain. These natives were only in the shattering void tier, so the level of their martial art was naturally pitifully low. Was there a need to care? He was the heir of a mighty 3-star force, so wouldn't he be welcomed wherever he went? "You dare stop me?" He strode forwards and scoffed, "So what if we enter?" One of the dwarves was too nervous, and gripped the staff in his hand tightly. Suddenly, a ray of light shot out from the staff, shooting towards Qian Zhao Tian. Qian Zhao Tian was shocked, because this speed was too fast, so fast that he could not dodge it. But after his shock, he remained calm, because an attack shot out by a shattering void tier cultivator, no matter how fast it was, what could it do to him? What a joke! After advancing into the severing mundane tier, who would not have enough origin power to temper their physique? Even if they could not possibly refine it to the level of pseudo-divine metal, reaching the level of level 20 godly metal was naturally a piece of cake. Then, even if he lay down and allowed these dwarves to attack him, so what? Pung! This ray of light hit Qian Zhao Tian's chest, and then pierced through. Because of the dwarves' height, this attack was slanted upwards. After the ray of light pierced through Qian Zhao Tian, it also shot into the skies, and did not shoot towards anyone else. Qian Zhao Tian slowly turned around, and it could be seen that his entire chest was gone, and wisps of black smoke were still exuding from it. His expression was filled with confusion, and he stretched out a hand towards the others. But he had just raised his hand when it continuously turned into dust, falling off his arm piece by piece. Not only that, his entire body was rotting, and finally, his face was disappearing with the wind. His entire body turned into a pile of mud, shattering into pieces on the ground with a loud bang. The heir of a 3-star force, a 3rd Severance Peak Stage elite, was actually killed so easily by a shattering void tier cultivator using a staff. His spirit had been completely destroyed, and even a celestial king could not possibly revive him. This was too inconceivable. Bewitching Maiden Row and the others involuntarily took a step back, and then their expressions changed simultaneously. They retreated once more, feeling a numbing tremble all over their bodies. It should be known that the staff in the hands of these dwarves was still aimed at them. Though Ling Han did not turn around, under the envelopment of his divine sense, he naturally saw everything clearly, and his expression similarly changed. If such a ray of light hit his body, would he be able to survive? Ling Han was completely unsure. This ray of light was definitely not a strength-type attack, but rather had reached an inconceivable height in terms of regulations. Thus, with a single wave of the attack, Qian Zhao Tian died without any resistance. This is a part of the power of the source power of Earth. Small Tower's voice rang out. Small Tower's voice rang out. You do not have to worry. You possess 2 source powers, so this kind of attack could not possibly kill you. The Heavenly Dao Jade must be nearby. These weapons have all obtained their destructive abilities through the Heavenly Dao Jade. Ling Han could not help but break out in a cold sweat and asked, "Didn't you say that after approaching the Heavenly Dao Jade, you would be able to accurately determine its location?" "Did I say exactly how close?" Small Tower asked extremely irresponsibly. "Fuck, could it be that you have to reach the Heavenly Dao Jade to be able to determine its location? Then I can do it too." Ling Han was speechless. Small Tower was originally just at Sundara, but why was it developing in the direction of being a fraud now? "Lu 17, you killed someone." The dwarves all exclaimed in shock. "I killed someone." That dwarf that had launched the attack also looked like he was about to cry. "I did not do it on purpose. I was just too nervous, and that was why my hand trembled." When everyone saw this, the corners of their mouths twitched slightly, feeling that Qian Zhao Tian had really died too unjustly. A king tier actually died because of the trembling hand of an extremely weak person. This was practically a joke. Chapter 1821. A group of dwarves was chattering there. Though they spoke fiercely, they should have never killed before, and now they were all making a big fuss as if the heavens and earth had collapsed. And Bewitching Maiden Row and the others wore strange expressions, unable to accept this. A mere shattering void tier killed a severing mundane tier level king tier. What kind of absurd thing was this? Everyone's eyes were fixed on the staff in the dwarf's hand. It was precisely because of the might of this thing that Qian Zhao Tian had been insta-killed in a single strike. What kind of treasured tool was this that could actually allow one to surpass innumerable cultivation levels and complete an ultimate kill? If this kind of thing could be used on a large scale, then the strength of a certain force would undergo a fundamental change. Even if the upper limit of this thing's might was dividing soul tier, when several hundred or several thousand were fired at once, even great elites of the Immortal Palace tier would have a slight headache, right? And if there were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands? Perhaps even Immortal Palace tier elites would have to retreat. With such thoughts, the eyes of Bewitching Maiden Row and the others shone brightly. Furthermore, the key was that as long as they managed to snatch a staff, it meant that they were invincible in this mystery realm. Everyone was a severing mundane tier, but this thing could kill 3rd Severance like slaughtering chickens, and it could probably easily defeat 4th Severance as well. Then, who could be a match for them? What Luo Changfeng, Zai Bingyun, they were all trash in front of them. Furthermore, they did not have a staff weapon in their hands, but they did. Then, they would have an absolute advantage, and wouldn't that kind of deterrence be frightening? This staff weapon was not much of a threat in the hands of the dwarves, because though the beam of light that shot out was too fast to be dodged, there was a process of activation, and in the instant the fingers clenched, bewitching Maiden Ro and the others could completely dodge with their strength. Previously, Chen Zhao Tian had been hit only because he had been too careless, but who could believe that a shattering void tear could actually threaten a severing mundane tear? But if this staff weapon landed in the hands of a severing mundane tear, then its threat would undoubtedly increase millions and millions of times, because even the process of activation was almost impossible to grasp, and life and death would be decided in an instant. Everyone's expressions were grave. Whoever was the first to snatch the staff weapon was equivalent to possessing the power to decide the life and death of others, and could even instantly kill everyone else. These people all revealed a murderous aura as they stared at the dwarves who were still struggling with the fact that they had accidentally killed a human. In the eyes of these holy sons and holy daughters of the large sects and wealthy families, the deaths of mere natives were nothing to them. Xiao, Beiyu Xiong was the first to move. He was a 4th Severance Peak stage king tier, and was confident that he could instantly kill all of these dwarves. He would not give them any chance to resist at all. Boom, he punched out, and terrifying power reverberated. The rules of the Great Path formed a storm that swept towards the dwarves. With his strength, this would be an instant kill. Even these shorties would not have the time to sense the impending doom. Bam! A heavy sound rang out, and a violent power suddenly slashed out. Ling Han appeared in front of these dwarves, one hand in an attacking posture. It was he who had cut apart Beiyu Xiong's fatal blow, saving the lives of those dwarves. In terms of battle prowess alone, Ling Han was far from being Beiyu Xiong's match. His figure was forcibly sent flying back, the bones all over his body cracking. Even so, the dwarves were still knocked down by the aftermath, and some were even seriously injured, vomiting blood. In front of a 4th Severance King tier, they were too weak, too weak. The humans have turned bad. The dwarves panicked, and all raised the staffs in their hands. Suddenly, multiple beams of light shot out, filling the skies. Since they already knew how frightening this thing was, bewitching Maiden Ro and the others were naturally prepared. They had long since spread out, and had already dodged the beams of light before they had even shot out. When the beams of light shot out, even they could not possibly dodge them. Thankfully, the dwarves still knew how to distinguish friend from foe, and did not attack Ling Han and the Empress. Ling Han, you are actually helping the outsiders, humph. Beiyu Xiong said coldly. At first, he could have insta-killed these natives with a single strike, so what need was there for him to flee here and there like he was doing now? Ling Han stood with his hands clasped behind his back, and calmly said, I am not against seizing treasures, but something like killing the innocent, I cannot do it, and am not used to it. Beiyu Xiong's expression was livid. Even Lin Fang and the others were indifferent. In their eyes, what was a mere shattering void tear? They were so weak that they could not even be called humans. For the sake of a great killing tool like the staff weapon, even if they had to slaughter an entire city in one go, they would not have the slightest bit of hesitation. In this world, it was the weak, the meat, the strong, and the prey. Ling Han, with a Dao heart like yours, you are still worthy of pursuing the pinnacle of martial art? Truly laughable. Beiyu Xiong said disdainfully, his figure flashing continuously. The attacks of the dwarves were like a tide, and now that the beams of light were interweaving, it was impossible to get close at all. They were completely attacking randomly, and whoever went up would definitely be riddled with holes. Ling Han was unmoved. These people could not sever the heaven and earth to attain Tao, so could it be that what they severed was their own conscience? Humans had to have a bottom line. If they did not have a bottom line, then they could not be called humans and could only be called monsters. No wonder a celestial king had to sever the heaven and earth to attain Tao. Without this kind of bearing, how could they be worthy of becoming the strongest in the world? Attack together, how can he be saved? Beiyu Xiong said to the others. Tingsun, Lin Fang, and the others all nodded. Even if it was not for the great fortune, they would still make a move just for those staff weapons. If they obtained them, they would be able to gain the upper hand in the hidden dragon mystery realm. At least, they would not have to fear anyone. Ling Han frowned. He was only one person, but there were a considerable number of 4th Severance Peak stage elites among Beiyu Xiong and the others. His own physique was tough, and he could be unafraid, but if those dwarves were hit by the gust of wind, they would definitely be beheaded. Furthermore, the Empress could not match 4th Severance at present, what more a king tier at 4th Severance Peak stage. What to do? People of the Garuru tribe, enter my spatial god tool, Ling Han said. To conceal the existence of the Black Tower, he had long since prepared a spatial god tool and immediately tossed it out. The dwarves were slightly confused. What the hell was a spatial god tool? In fact, there was no cultivation system here at all. They were born in the Shattering Void tier, and when they died, they would still be in the Shattering Void tier. They only knew how to use weapons like staff weapons. Small-hearted. Lin Fang and Teng Xin both moved. There were a total of 14 of them. Aside from Ling Han and the Empress, Luo Changfeng and Zai Bingyun had traveled alone, and Qian Zhao Tian had also died. Now, aside from Bewitching Maiden Ro, the others all looked ferocious, and all launched their attacks. With a great weapon like the staff weapon, even Ling Han's tough physique would not be able to withstand a single blow. Can you match the power of regulation of the Dividing Soul tier? Bewitching Maiden Ro struggled internally for a while, and finally moved. However, the target of her attack was not Ling Han and the Empress, nor was it the dwarves, but rather Beiyu Xiong and the others. Though she was a great bewitching maiden, a great bewitching spirit, she had her own bottom line. Chapter 1822. Ling Han and his group fought against Beiyu Xiong's group of 8. This was an unfair battle. Even if Ling Han's physique was tough, and he could be called an undying monster in the Severing Mundane tier, his battle prowess was a major flaw. How could he possibly match a king tier at the peak stage of the 4th Severance? There was only one such opponent, and he could even tire the other to death if he used all his moves, but now the other had no intention of tangling with him at all, and only wanted to shake him off and make a move on the dwarves. This left Ling Han with no good solution. The Empress was also limited by her cultivation level and could only barely block one opponent. Thankfully, Bewitching Maiden Ro was strong enough. She was a 4th Severance in the first place, and later rose like a dragon, reaching the peak stage of the 4th Severance. She was not inferior to any king tier here, and added with her 9 revolutions charm physique and the cultivation technique of the Purity sect, she could tangle with 2 4th Severance king tiers. But that was all. There were too many opponents, and which one of them was not a king tier? They had no intention of deciding victory with Ling Han and his group at all, but placed their focus on killing those dwarves. As long as they killed them and obtained the staff weapon, all problems would be solved. Giant human, here's a divine weapon for you. A dwarf threw out the staff in his hand at Ling Han. He was obviously a smart person, and made a decision that could change the situation of the battle. "Ha, I thank you," a holy son said with a laugh. He held a rock in one hand, and pointed at the staff weapon that had been thrown out with his other hand, and exclaimed softly, "Exchange." Ling Han stretched out a hand to catch it, but there was a ripple in space, and he saw that the flying staff weapon actually turned into a rock. He hurriedly rushed towards that holy son, who was holding that staff weapon in his hand. Regulations of space, he really hadn't thought that there was actually someone here who grasped the regulations of space, and that person had not shown any signs at all before this. Everyone thought that he was skilled in the regulations of fire. This holy son was called Tan Wei, and his cultivation level was at the peak stage of the 3rd Severance. Die! Tan Wei turned the staff weapon and pointed it at Ling Han. Then he pressed down on the staff weapon like the dwarves, wanting to activate the death ray and blast Ling Han to death. Exile, Ling Han stretched out a hand and pressed down. Xiao, Tan Wei's whole person immediately disappeared. He then used lightning flash to rush out. When his figure stopped, Tan Wei also appeared from the alternate dimension. Tan Wei was a little dumbfounded. He didn't expect that Ling Han would also grasp the spatial laws. He didn't even turn his head as he kicked backwards. With the sensitivity of his divine sense, he could naturally tell that Ling Han was right behind him. Ling Han punched at the back of Tan Wei's head. If this punch landed, Tan Wei would definitely die. Don't even think about it. Lin Fang charged over, her right hand raised, and a black whip shot out, wrapping around Ling Han's right wrist. This speed was extraordinarily fast. Pa! Before Ling Han's fist could even land, it had already curled up. Wang! The whip was pulled taut, but Ling Han's punch did not land. It was only half an inch away from the back of Tan Wei's head, and the strong wind even messed up Tan Wei's hair, causing it to dance in the wind. Just at this moment, Tan Wei's foot also arrived, directly aiming for Ling Han's lower abdomen. This foot was very fierce, and it was obvious that it was going to destroy Ling Han's dantian. Once his dantian was destroyed, then Ling Han could only give up this physical body. At the same time, Tan Wei was also twisting his upper body. His greatest killing weapon was naturally the staff weapon in his hand. This was a super weapon that could instantly end the battle. Ling Han humphed, and the divine demon sword appeared, slashing at the long whip. Wishful thinking. Lin Fang smirked coldly. This whip was made from 2-star pseudo-divine metal that had been drawn into threads, and then kneaded with the tendons of an immortal beast. Its toughness had reached a hair-raising degree, and could be considered a precious treasure even among 2-star pseudo-celestial tools. You want to slice it? Dream on. Shwa! Sword light flashed, and the divine demon sword had already struck the body of the whip. Suddenly, a blinding light burst out. True enough, even the divine demon sword was unable to slice the whip, but Ling Han used the divine demon sword and began to devour the pseudo-divine metal in the whip. In essence, even if it was level 10 pseudo-divine metal, it was actually still level 20 godly metal, just that there were more layers forged. Since that was the case, was there anything that the divine demon sword could not devour? Not even the time of 1/10 of a heartbeat had passed, and the pseudo-divine metal in this section of the whip had already been devoured, turning into rot. Then, Ling Han suddenly used the 9 heavens flame. Hong! The immortal flames intertwined, and the tendons of the immortal beast immediately softened. Then, the sharpness of the divine demon sword showed its might, and sliced the whip in two. All of this seemed to take a long time to describe, but in truth, the whole process only took less than 1/10 of a heartbeat. Ling Han's sword swept past, and the whip was sliced in two. He regained his freedom, and with a flash of his figure he dodged Tan Wei's attack by a hair's breadth. However, the staff weapon had finally fallen into the hands of Beiyu Xiong and his group. Xiu. Beiyu Xiong and the others all leaped over, protecting Tan Wei in the center, and in the only gap left open, Tan Wei raised his staff weapon and aimed it at Ling Han. Haha! These 8 people all laughed loudly. Later, it was possible that there would still be a battle to the death between them, but for now, they were united against a common enemy. The Empress and bewitching Maiden Ro were both extremely charming, and they could not bear to kill them. Moreover, the 2 women were not as difficult to deal with as Ling Han. That physique of theirs was practically immortal. Ling Han sighed. After all, there was a gap of 2 minor levels, and added with the disadvantage in numbers, he was ultimately unable to turn the tide. Do you regret it? Beiyu Xiong smirked coldly. You have to be so hypocritical. Who do you think you are? A king that saves all life in the world. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, I have never regretted the things I do. Then you can go and die. Tan Wei hooted. He had almost been killed by a single punch from Ling Han just now, and this was a great humiliation for him. As the holy son of a 3-star sect, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? Everyone, why must you resort to force? Bewitching Maiden Ro's face was filled with a charming smile. At this moment, she had to use her charm techniques. With her own initiative, she transformed into an exquisite bewitching maiden, causing any man who saw her to spit fire, their bones to go soft, and their willpower to instantly plummet to rock bottom, bowing down to her every frown and smile. Even if Beiyu Xiong and the others were king tiers, so what? At this moment, their hearts were pounding, and they did not even remember who they were. Bitch, go and die. Lin Fang smirked coldly. She had long since found the Empress and bewitching Maiden Ro an eyesore, and now was the perfect opportunity. She snatched the staff weapon from Tan Wei's hands and aimed it at bewitching Maiden Ro. Under normal circumstances, Tan Wei definitely could not have been defeated by her, but who asked him to be so entranced by her beauty that his reactions were directly several tens of thousands of beats slower. Only after Lin Fang snatched the staff weapon away did he come to his senses. Bewitching Maiden Ro instantly paled. Who had not seen the destructive power of this staff weapon? Killing 3rd Severance Peak Stage King Tiers was as easy as harvesting straw. Though she was a 4th Severance, she probably could not be much better off. No! Beiyu Xiong and the others also came to their senses and hurriedly called out. This kind of exquisite beauty, how could they kill her? Lin Fang showed a vicious grin. She admired bewitching Maiden Ro's deathly pale beautiful face and the fear in her eyes. Then, she pressed down on the staff weapon without any hesitation. Xiao, a beam of light shot out. A figure flashed, and in the instant that Lin Fang pressed down on her finger, stood in front of bewitching Maiden Ro. Chapter 1824. Retreat, retreat, retreat. Lin Fang and the others all shouted loudly. With the help of the staff weapon, Ling Han and his group were too frightening and could not be matched at all. This was the so-called 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. They only had 1 staff weapon, and the disadvantage in terms of numbers was too great. Furthermore, Ling Han and those dwarves all had powerful immunity to the death ray, so how were they supposed to fight? In the end, only 3 managed to retreat successfully, and they were Lin Fang, Teng Sen, and Wei Nian. The others were all killed by the death ray and turned into mush. We won! The dwarves all cheered loudly with their arms raised. Drink! Set up a banquet! Celebrate! These dwarves did not have any sense of danger at all, and were not the slightest bit worried that Lin Fang and her group would make a comeback, nor did they realize that the gap in cultivation level between the 2 sides was as wide as heaven and earth. If it were not for the help of Ling Han and his group, they would definitely have been instantly annihilated, even if they had the staff weapon. Ling Han and his group also received the warm hospitality of the dwarves. Bewitching Maiden Ro was slightly displeased. She was moved by Ling Han's act of sacrificing himself to protect them, but he was completely fine, which made her feel like she had been deceived. You didn't move for so long. Are you deliberately deceiving me into sympathy and tears? But it could not be denied that her life had indeed been saved by Ling Han, and she definitely had to accept this favor. Want to return the favor? The Empress hooked a finger under bewitching Maiden Ro's small chin. Serve my husband in bed tonight. Bewitching Maiden Ro was greatly embarrassed. Aren't you too unreserved? But in the words of others, it was a perverted statement, but when it came from the Empress's mouth, it was like a golden rule, filled with dignity, and made others want to obey. This was the charm of the Empress. Ling Han shook his head and grimaced. Why did the Empress always think of the 9 Revolutions charm physique? Could it be that he could not ascend to the peak without the help of the 9 Revolutions charm physique? However, something that the Empress had set her mind on was clearly not something that he could stop. Thus, Ling Han could not be bothered to persuade her, and merely started to ask the dwarves. These dwarves were naturally not wary of others, and because they had fought side by side with Ling Han, they were full of trust in him. Whatever he asked, they would tell him everything they knew. The staff weapons in their hands were called sacred weapons by them, and they were taken from a mountain cave. What made Ling Han extremely astonished was that these dwarves actually didn't come here through the normal way, but rather from that mountain cave. Every 100 years, they would enter the cave, take out a few newly born dwarves, and then bury the old and dead people in the cave. Ling Han had a guess. In fact, these dwarves were formed from the source power of earth. The heavenly law jade was the origin of heaven and earth. It was an extremely high-level existence, and the earth was originally the mother of life. What was so strange about giving birth to these earth spirits? Aside from the fact that they were all born from the cave, the other evidence was that they were completely fine after being hit by the staff weapon's death ray, because they were one in the first place, and all originated from some kind of power from the heavenly law jade. Ling Han's request to go to the cave was met with opposition from a portion of the Garuru tribe, but there were also some dwarves who expressed their agreement. Ling Han had given them great help, so how could they refuse the request of their benefactor? Finally, these dwarves said that they had to discuss, ask the elders of their tribe to make a divination, ask the spirits of their ancestors, and so on, and then they could give Ling Han an answer. Ling Han did not urge them. Though the cultivation level of these dwarves was not high, they grasped various techniques and could not be underestimated. Perhaps there was a great killing weapon in that cave? He stayed with the Empress and the others, and waited for the result of the dwarves' discussion. Ling Han and the Empress both entered into the Black Tower. They had both reached the peak stage of the second severance, and as long as they pushed open the barrier of their cultivation level, they would be able to deliver the third strike, and their battle prowess would naturally soar innumerable times. As long as they advanced into the third severance, then in this mystery realm, they would no longer have to fear anyone. Under normal circumstances, this was an impossible thing. At least, it would require the accumulation of several tens of thousands of years. If one's comprehension ability was inferior, then one might not be able to break through even after 1 billion, 10 billion, or 100 billion years. But Ling Han had the reincarnation tree, and more importantly, after the reincarnation tree had been reborn from the ashes, its effects had also increased by a considerable number of times. Coincidentally, Ling Han had also just harvested a few fruits. The reincarnation tree very rarely bore fruit, but as the source of all trees, the fruits it bore were definitely on the level of celestial medicine. Even if this present reincarnation tree was still something that had been sprouted, and the effects of the fruits were not as expected, it was still a celestial treasure. Ling Han and the Empress ate 4 celestial fruits, and then comprehended Tao under the reincarnation tree. They hoped that they could complete their breakthrough in the shortest time possible. 7 days later, Ling Han and the Empress came out of seclusion. Though neither of them had broken through, they both had great confidence. As long as they went into seclusion again, they were 90% sure that they could deliver the third strike. Too bad, the celestial medicine had already been used up. They couldn't possibly eat the 7 lives divine clouds, right? That mutated celestial medicine. Ling Han thought of that celestial medicine that had taken the form of a wolf's head and a rabbit's body. If they could refine it, then both he and the Empress should be able to advance into the third severance. The discussion of the Garuru tribe had also come to a conclusion. They agreed to let Ling Han and his group enter the mountain cave, but there was a precondition. They had to obtain a mountain treasure as an offering. In this mountain, there were rocks that had gained sentience and become spirits, and were called mountain treasures. In the Garuru tribe, mountain treasures were the best offering. Furthermore, aside from a specific time every 100 years, even dwarves were unable to enter the mountain cave at normal times. They could only do so by using mountain treasures as an offering. Thus, they did not deliberately make things difficult for Ling Han and his group at all. Ling Han and his group definitely could not wait as long as 100 years. After another 9 years or so, the suppressive effects of the volcano would disappear, and this place would once again become a land of violence, and only beings that were born and bred here would be able to survive. Thus, Ling Han and the Empress immediately set out, and bewitching Maiden Ro also chose to go with them. What was the point of staying in the village? Let me make this clear first. Saving you is one thing, and traveling together is another. Don't even think that we'll split the treasures with you, Ling Han said seriously. Bewitching Maiden Ro couldn't help but grind her teeth in anger. This treasure had not even appeared, and you had already drawn a clear line between us. Stinky man, why did he save me in the first place? She was extremely dissatisfied. With her charm, any man should circle around her and do whatever she said. Even if she made an excessive request, as long as she smiled and asked softly, there should be no reason for her to refuse. How did I meet such a guy? Bewitching Maiden Ro faced the Empress, and had no choice but to admit that any man that possessed such an exquisite fairy would indeed develop an immunity towards other women. Even a great bewitching maiden like her was no exception. But she was still unconvinced. There was no man that the purity sect could not conquer. If she did not turn this man into a subject under her skirt, she was afraid that a demon would be left behind in her heart, and she would never be able to break through to the dividing soul tier in this lifetime. Stinking man, then come and fight. I don't believe that I can't take you in. Chapter 1825. Ling Han and the others started a search in the mountains. As for the dwarf race, Ling Han had already reminded them to be careful. With the help of the staff weapon, they should not encounter any trouble. The three of them had heard the Garuru tribe describe that the mountain treasure was buried underground, some even several dozen meters deep. Aside from hunting, the daily life of these dwarves was to excavate the mountain treasure, but their gains were very, very few. Furthermore, these dwarves were too simple. Whenever they dug up a mountain treasure, they would anxiously offer it up and had no concept of savings at all. Generally speaking, the mountain treasure was very easy to identify. It glowed on its own and was milky white in color, and there seemed to be a transparent liquid inside. There was once an extremely daring Garuru tribe member who opened the mountain treasure and drank this liquid and directly died a violent death. From then on, no Garuru dared to joke about the mountain treasure, thinking that this was a punishment from the gods. With the abilities of Ling Han and the others, they could easily topple mountains and overturn seas, but this mountain was different. It was too sturdy. Ling Han tried to blast open the mountain rocks, but there was no good effect at all. He could only slowly dig like an ordinary person. This efficiency was shockingly low, and could be said to be completely due to luck. This couldn't be helped. The three of them all tried their best to search for the mountain treasure, and bewitching Maiden Ro even said in anger that if the mountain treasure was discovered by her, she definitely would not bring Ling Han into the mountain cave. Ling Han only chuckled. "Small Tower, can you guess what that mountain treasure is?" Ling Han asked. Since there was something that could help cheat, why not use it? Small Tower pondered and said, that could be a cave spirit precious jade, formed from the accumulation of a sliver of the essence of the heavenly Tao source rock, so it could open the cave where the heavenly Tao jade is. Are you sure that the heavenly Tao jade is hidden in that cave? 99%. Small Tower nodded. Since the heavenly Tao jade is formed, only celestial king tier methods can resist it. What you have to pay attention to are those two brats and little girl from celestial king tier forces. It is impossible for others to take it away. Can you find the mountain treasure? Ling Han asked again. If the distance is close, I can sense it, Small Tower said. How close? Within 10 feet. This distance was too small, but compared to turning over the entire mountain, the advantage of digging 10 feet down was greater than the heavens. Ling Han nodded, spread out his figure, and began to circle around in the mountains. If the mountain treasure was less than 3 meters underground, then Lil Tower would be able to sense it. Compared to digging, it was many times easier to go around and dig. Unfortunately, after circling around, Small Pagoda showed no reaction. Ling Han had no choice but to become a miner and cultivate the land in the mountains. This place was almost entirely made up of rocks, and the amount of soil was pitifully small. Furthermore, the rocks were extraordinarily hard, so they had to be refined with the power of rules. One could imagine how slow one's progress was. Fortunately, Ling Han and the other two had borrowed staff weapons, which could save them a lot of effort. Even so, they were still ridiculously slow. This went on for more than 5 months. The 3 young king tiers all put down their arrogance and diligently did the menial work. Brat, turn left, Small Tower suddenly said. Ling Han was stunned at first, and then revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. I found something. Small Tower was impatient and said, I told you to turn left, so turn left. What's with all this nonsense? Would it kill you not to beat Sundra? Ling Han continued to cultivate the land on the left, but he had just started when Small Tower said, You've gone too far, turn right a bit. After repeating this a few times, Small Tower finally stopped making any noise and allowed Ling Han to move forward. Now, slow down. After advancing about half a meter, Small Tower spoke again. Ling Han slowed down his movements. Because the staff weapon might damage the cave spirit precious jade, he might as well not use the staff weapon, and just use his hands to dig at the rocks. His hands were entwined with rules, and they were like iron shovels. Though they were not as indestructible as the staff weapon, he could control them freely. If a piece of jade suddenly popped out of the rock, it would not be damaged. After a while, Ling Han's eyes lit up as he discovered a piece of beautiful jade. Indeed, as the dwarves had said, this rock was milky white and slightly transparent, and he could faintly feel liquid flowing inside as if it had a life of its own. As expected, it is the cave's spirit precious jade, Small Tower said. Is this a treasure? Ling Han asked. Of course, it was formed by absorbing a shred of source power of Earth, and even ascending origin tiers would be tempted. Realization dawned on Ling Han. That dwarf had ingested the marrow fluid within and died, not because the precious fluid was poisonous, but because the medicinal effect was too strong, directly causing him to explode. Those dwarves were only in the shattering void tier, and though they had an inexplicable relationship with the heavenly Tao Jade, they could not completely ignore the suppression of cultivation level. After all, this was directly drunk into the body, and could not be mentioned in the same breath as the light of death hitting the body. Unfortunately, this thing had to be used to open the cave, or else he could keep it for himself. As the saying went, one could not catch a wolf without sacrificing a child. Using this to exchange for the heavenly Tao Jade, and then the fifth severance, its significance surpassed everything. Ling Han carefully dug out the cave's spirit precious jade, and felt it warm in his hand, with a slightly wriggling feeling. Put down the mountain treasure. An icy voice rang out. Though it was very pleasant to the ears, it was filled with killing intent. A person stood behind Ling Han, and even with the sensitivity of Ling Han's divine sense, he actually did not discover how she had come over. Her strength was strong, and her methods were truly astonishing. Zai Bingyun, the heir of a celestial king tier clan, no wonder she had such methods. Ling Han slowly turned around and faced Zai Bingyun directly. She held a staff in her hand, and the tip of the staff was pointed at him. It was precisely the weapon of the Garuru tribe. She obviously knew how to use this powerful weapon, and there was a hint of a cold smile at the corner of her lips, as if she was mocking him. With such a powerful weapon threatening, Ling Han would definitely have no choice but to submit. Why did she not make a move? That was because she was worried that she would destroy the mountain treasure as well, so she would wait for Ling Han to hand over the mountain treasure before making a move to kill him. Ling Han frowned slightly, and then killing intent surged. You killed people, he said. I sensed a strong scent of blood, and there was more than one. He suddenly became furious. You slaughtered that village of dwarves. This deranged woman. Zai Bingyun's expression was filled with disdain. What was the big deal about slaughtering a village of dwarves? He was only a native of the shattering void tier, and was not even qualified to be remembered by her. She raised her long, shapely brows and said, Don't be so long-winded, and quickly hand over the mountain treasure. This man was too despicable, actually daring to make her expose her bottom in public. Not only did he have to die, all the others who had seen her naked body had to die as well. Ling Han clenched his fist and coldly said, Give me your life in exchange. Zai Bingyun shifted the staff weapon slightly, and Xiao, a beam of light shot out, shooting towards Ling Han's right leg. This was a warning. Chapter 1826. The speed of the death ray was too fast. Putting aside the severing mundane tier, probably even a dividing soul tier might not be able to dodge it. Thus, this beam of light naturally struck Ling Han's leg without any deviation. Ling Han stood proudly like a boulder. This Zai Bingyun's face was instantly filled with shock, her small mouth involuntarily gaping. This was something she could not understand, believe, or accept. How is this possible? Ling Han humphed and charged over. Deranged woman, I will use your head to apologize to the Garuru tribe. You overestimate yourself, Zai Bingyun said disdainfully. She had already recovered from her previous shock. After all, she was a king among kings. And actually dared to ask her to die with him? She was the heir of a celestial king tier clan, the future empress of heaven. How noble! So what if you can block the staff weapon? Can your battle prowess match mine? Zai Bingyun battled fiercely with Ling Han. She was filled with confidence in herself, and the reason why she used the staff weapon to threaten him was only to save some strength. After all, Ling Han's physique was too strong, and she was deeply touched. Which celestial king tier force are you the heir of? She asked. Otherwise, without the brand that a celestial king had imprinted in his body, how could he possibly resist the regulations of great Tao formed by the source power of Earth? This was the terrifying aspect of the staff weapon. It was equivalent to a celestial king casting a technique, and without the same level of regulations, there was no way to resist it at all. Humph, if it's not a celestial king tier force, you can slaughter wantonly? Ling Han also used the staff weapon. Amidst the death ray, Zai Bingyun similarly could not dodge, and was blasted head-on. However, Zai Bingyun acted as if nothing had happened. As she attacked wildly, she said disdainfully, "You think that you are the only one who has been bestowed supreme regulations by a celestial king tier force?" Realization dawned on Ling Han. No wonder she guessed that he was the heir of a celestial king tier force. Since the staff weapon was useless, Ling Han simply put it away. He raised his fists, channeling the nine heavens flame and Shenyin source water, and began to clash with Zai Bingyun. However, staff weapons could allow a group of shattering void tier natives to insta-kill third severance king tiers, but obviously could not be used on Luo Changfeng, Zai Bingyun, and the others. Going by this logic, it was actually the source power of heaven and earth that was slightly more awesome. Thinking about it, how many source energies were there, and how many celestial kings were there? Or in other words, if a celestial king wanted someone else to possess this kind of destructive power, he himself would also have to pay an extremely high price. This was for the sake of allowing a junior to possess the strength to insta-kill severing mundane tier and dividing soul tier, yet a celestial king had to make such a sacrifice. Which celestial king would be so foolish? Ling Han and Zai Bingyun exchanged blows. In terms of battle prowess, he was clearly at a disadvantage, but with the might of two great source powers, he was not too much inferior. Zai Bingyun smirked coldly. Even if there was a supreme regulation bestowed by a celestial king, could it be used limitlessly? Up until now, you have only used this kind of Tao law to protect yourself. You have not used it to attack because it will be used up. It wasn't that she didn't hate Ling Han, but rather that she wanted to use this precious Tao law when she was seizing the heavenly Tao jade. Otherwise, without the protection of celestial king Tao law, she would not be able to seize this kind of treasure at all. Now that Ling Han was squandering like this, once the power of regulation was completely used up, what right did he have to resist her, and what right did he have to seize the heavenly Tao jade? Idiot, which celestial king tier force had raised him? But thinking about it again, this brat seemed to be very sinister. He was clearly the heir of a celestial king tier force, and actually ran off to become a follower of a 3-star force. She had almost been deceived. Despicable villain, Zai Bingyun rebuked. How was this guy worthy of being the heir of a celestial king tier? He actually dared to hide his head and show his tail. Ling Han did not argue. What was there to say to a dead person? Since he had already developed killing intent, then whether you were a man or a woman, no matter how beautiful you were, it was impossible that you could arouse the slightest bit of pity in him. The two of them battled fiercely, and Zai Bingyun became more and more shocked the more she fought. Logically speaking, with the rate at which Ling Han was expending, the celestial king tier regulations should have already been completely used up. How could he still continue to circulate as if there was no end to it? This was an impossible thing. It should be known that though the power of celestial king tier was endless, they were severing mundane tiers, after all, and there was a limit to the regulations that they could bear. If too many regulations of Great Tao were sealed in, it would be a huge burden on them, and they might even explode and die. She was estimating based on her own situation. The regulations that Ling Han had expended had definitely reached the amount that had been sealed in her body, so why was he still able to circulate them? Could it be that his physique was strong, and there were also many regulations that had been sealed in him? Was that possible? That was celestial king tier regulations, so what was the use of having a stronger physique? In front of celestial king tier regulations, was there any difference between 1 point and 100 points? They would all be crushed. This battle continued, and Zai Bingyun's shock became greater and greater. That was because Ling Han was still wantonly using Celestial King tier regulations, just like a super prodigal. She could not understand, and could only feel shock. What was even more unacceptable to her was that her Celestial King tier regulations were greatly expended, and she had already used up half of them. If they continued to fight, she might not even have enough to collect the Heavenly Dao Jade. Just you wait. She threw down these words and turned to leave. She could not waste any more Celestial King tier regulations here. Ling Han did not chase after her. It was useless even if he caught up now. Similarly, he could not do anything to Zai Bingyun. He had to break through to the third severance. Ling Han thought. At first, he had this thought, and now that he thought that the dwarf village might have been slaughtered by Zai Bingyun, his killing intent was even more boundless. He, the Empress, and bewitching maiden Ro rushed back to the dwarf village, but saw that this place was already littered with corpses, and not a single survivor could be found. This deranged woman. Ling Han's eyes swept over, his whole body trembling slightly. Though he had not interacted with the dwarves for a long time, he was very appreciative of their passion and simplicity. He had definitely not thought that he would actually run into such a scene one day. Zai Bingyun, if I do not kill you, I cannot rest easy. Ling Han looked up at the skies, and practically enunciated each word clearly. Xiao, just at this moment, the ground suddenly split open, and a rabbit suddenly scuttled out. It had the head of a wolf, and opened its mouth wide like a bottomless pit. It was as large as 7 or 8 meters in size, and bit towards Ling Han. It was that mutated celestial medicine. This guy really came and went like a shadow, and was skilled in stealth, deceiving even the divine sense of Ling Han and the others. Furthermore, it was quite intelligent. The point of attack just happened to be when Ling Han was incredibly furious, and a powerful ripple appeared in his mind. Then the attack came. Though Ling Han was shocked, he showed a sliver of a smile instead. He was only afraid that this celestial medicine would never appear again. Then he would not be able to collect it, but once it appeared, he would at least have hope. This celestial medicine had even eaten a corner of the 7 Lives Divine Cloud's buttocks. No matter what, he had to get his revenge. The celestial medicine was swallowed in one gulp, and Ling Han suddenly disappeared. The rabbit's head immediately returned to its original size, and the wolf's head was dripping with saliva. It was going to refine Ling Han, and then refine the 7 Lives Divine Cloud. Chapter 1828. Killing Zai Bingyun became Ling Han's inner demon, his obsession. He exited the Black Tower, and released the suppression on his cultivation level. Instantly, thunderclouds rolled over in the skies. This was a Celestial King-level mystery realm, but it still couldn't hide from the mysteries of heaven. It was clear how high the Heavenly Dao was, and it was above Celestial Kings. Was there any existence that could escape the Dao of heaven and earth, not within the 5 elements, and truly stand high above, able to look down on everything? Ling Han suddenly thought. Stop thinking like that, it's too dangerous, Small Tower suddenly warned. Ling Han only humphed and didn't ask. The Heavenly Dao is merciless, and will erase any existence that wants to escape its control. Though the Heavenly Dao can only operate above a certain rule, and can't send down a heavenly punishment that far surpasses your cultivation level to erase you, it can make you extremely unfortunate. From now on, not only will you have no chance with treasures, you will also suffer from bad luck, Small Tower explained. It calmly said, to say nothing else, it only needs to let you encounter a Celestial King, and let this Celestial King know that you have 2 source powers of heaven and earth, and I believe most Celestial Kings will attack you. Can you escape? Ling Han was silent. He wasn't afraid of the heavenly tribulation. It couldn't greatly surpass his cultivation level, but if it arranged for him to run into a Celestial King now, then even the Black Tower couldn't protect him. As the saying went, there was heaven's will in the unseen world. At least now, he wasn't qualified to challenge the mysterious Heavenly Dao. It was better to obediently endure the tribulation. Fighting against the heavens required powerful strength, and no matter what, he had to be a Celestial King to be able to resist the demonic moth created by the Heavenly Dao. Kwang, the heavenly tribulation took shape and instantly struck down a long bolt of lightning, spreading the might of regulations to suppress and kill the ant that dared to extract the power of heaven and earth. Ling Han dealt with it calmly. After entering the celestial realm, the heavenly tribulation was actually much gentler to him. In terms of absolute might, that third severance heavenly tribulation was definitely countless times stronger than the tribulation of the Genesis tier, but more importantly, Ling Han's strength was also rising, and with this comparison, he was actually becoming more and more relaxed. Because in the celestial realm, there wasn't just one freak like him, and the heavenly Tao wouldn't be so concerned about him. Of course, such a heavenly tribulation was something that even kings would fear, but it was nothing much for kings among kings. In fact, Ling Han even took the initiative to shatter his own body to be tempered by the power of the heavenly tribulation. Ling Han's eyes shone brightly, transforming into two heavenly pillars that shot into the sky. It seemed like even the secret realm was unable to block them. Using his hand as a blade, he slashed it into the sky. Cleaving heaven and earth. This slash clearly hadn't struck anything, but a deafening explosion erupted in the heavens and the earth. This was the sound of the great Tao. In an instant, the lightning blazed and the power of the heavenly tribulation surged. Ling Han slashed at the world with his saber, causing the connection between him and the world to become even weaker. This naturally caused the world to be dissatisfied. This was only the third slash. The fourth slash would definitely incite an even more intense backlash from heaven and earth. If he couldn't resist it, he would die. Ling Han nodded internally. No wonder there were so few emperor tiers. Sometimes, even if you were freakishly talented and had reached the standard in terms of comprehension, could you resist the backlash of heaven and earth? These four slashes, each slash was harder than the last, and the backlash was also stronger with each slash. The first time, Ling Han could practically ignore it, and the second time, he felt it. This third time, he had to take it seriously. Then what about the fourth? Furthermore, he was going to reach the fifth severance, which was even more terrifying. He deduced on this basis, and felt that it would be very, very difficult for him to survive the backlash of heaven and earth after the fifth severance. Even if he cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, it wouldn't be of much help. Rising from the ashes, he would still continue to be insta-killed the moment he came back to life. Fifth severance, wasn't that the decapitation strike? Heaven never bars one's way, Small Tower said. In Celestial King tier level sex, Celestial Kings would prepare natural peach seals for those disciples with nature-defying talent. This can conceal heaven's secrets and send down the might of divine punishment of the first severance. A thought flashed in Ling Han's mind. After using the natural peach seal, the fifth severance was actually passed as the fourth severance. Then he was confident. Furthermore, if it was passed normally, he might have a 1 in a billion chance of success, but the Empress definitely couldn't. Even a supreme divine fetus formed from the 9 deaths heaven art couldn't possibly match the backlash of heaven and earth of the fifth severance. Natural peach seal? What is that? Ling Han asked. One of the mother trees of the celestial realm, an existence that stands on equal footing with the reincarnation tree, Small Tower said. However, the leaves of the natural peach tree can't help one comprehend Tao, and can only conceal heaven's secrets. This was already awesome enough, being able to deceive even heaven and earth. Where can I get one? The Rock Palace should have one. The Rock Palace? As Ling Han resisted the heavenly tribulation, his mind wandered. He had come to the Fu clan to find out the location of the Rock Palace. Now, since he knew that the Rock Palace was in the Western Celestial Realm, and the fifth severance definitely required the natural peach seal, he had to hurry over as soon as possible. After advancing into the dividing soul tier, the natural peach seal naturally lost its purpose. All right, I'll go to the Western Celestial Realm after I leave the Mystery Realm, Ling Han roared, and waved his fist angrily at the heavens. This dog's hit heavenly Tao. What was it doing tormenting people like this? Half a day later, no matter how much the heaven and earth wanted to erase Ling Han, it could only withdraw the tribulation lightning and disperse. Third severance. Ling Han sensed for a moment, and a smile appeared on his lips. The present him was indescribably strong. At least, if he encountered Zai Bingyun again, he was confident that he could kill her within 1,000 moves. That was because he still had two source powers of heaven and earth, so what if she was an emperor tier? Husband saw the heavenly tribulation disperse, and the empress floating over, her expression proud. This was pride for Ling Han. Meanwhile, bewitching Maiden Ro was gaping in shock in the distance. She knew that Ling Han had only been in the middle stage of the second severance previously. Though they had all advanced to the peak stage in the ascending dragon palace, the accumulation of time needed to advance from the peak stage of the second severance to the third severance was mind-numbingly long. She was an experienced person. Even if the sect had used a secret treasure that sped up the flow of time for her by 1,000 times, saving 300,000 years of time, she had still used a whole 1 million years' time in total. You were in the mystery realm and could not use time treasures, so it had only been over half a year, and most of the time was spent digging rocks. Even if you had refined a celestial medicine, it would not be so exaggerated. This guy was really a monster. Ling Han smiled at the Empress and said, "Let's go to the cave." He had a mountain treasure in his possession, and Zai Bingyun could not possibly find a mountain treasure in such a short time, so the most likely thing that she would do was to lie in ambush near the cave and wait for him to open the door before making a move to snatch it. If Zai Bingyun really planned to do that, then this would be the place where she would die. Ling Han had rarely hated someone so much that he was determined to kill them, but as for Zai Bingyun, if he did not kill her, he would feel that his conscience would not be able to live with it. The three of them walked towards the middle of the mountain together. Not long after, the cave appeared. It was very ordinary, and a few rocks blocked the entrance. It looked like they would be able to enter as long as they were moved away. That naturally could not be moved. Ling Han had tried, but each rock was heavier than a galaxy, and was not something that he could move at all. He took out the mountain treasure, and placed it on a rock as the dwarf had said. Then he waited quietly. Sometimes it would be half a day, and sometimes it would be 3 days, and the cave would open. "You can scram now." It was at this moment that a figure appeared. Luo Changfeng. Chapter 1829. Luo Changfeng was actually quite depressed. At first, he had thought that he would definitely come out on top this time, and the only one who could compete with him was Zai Bingyun. But when he came out of the ascending dragon hall, he found himself falling behind step by step. The entrance to this place was discovered by Ling Han, and he brought a large group of people with him. At first, he had thought that if they split up, he would be the first to find the heavenly Dao Jade, but reality proved that he had not even touched the edge of it. If it were not for the fact that he had encountered Zai Bingyun, he still would not have known that the heavenly Dao Jade was very possibly hidden in this cave, and the way to open it was the mountain treasure. And now, even the mountain treasure was found by Ling Han first. It doesn't matter, he said to himself. Although he was falling behind step by step, as long as he could turn the tables at the last moment and seize the heavenly Dao Jade, so what? It was not that he had not suspected why Zai Bingyun would deliberately tell him such valuable information. Perhaps this was only a lie, but Zai Bingyun had drawn out a sliver of her memories for him to see. That was the information she had obtained when she had extracted the souls of the dwarves. Therefore, although Luo Changfeng was still a little hesitant, he would still envelop this cave with his divine sense every day. He didn't expect that Ling Han would really bring the mountain treasure here a few days later. The heavenly Dao Jade is his. Facing Ling Han, he was naturally filled with a sense of superiority. Previously, Ling Han had obediently made way for him, which meant that Ling Han was afraid of his identity as the holy son of a celestial king-tier sect. Moreover, he was an emperor-level genius. "What are you waiting for?" he said arrogantly. Ling Han narrowed his eyes at him. Did this guy really think he was so awesome? He laughed and said, "Come, show me how to roll. If you roll well, I will reward you." Luo Changfeng was also taken aback for a moment before he came to his senses. "Damn, how dare you make fun of me? How dare you?" Luo Changfeng sneered, but he did not get angry. There was no need for him to do so. He was such a noble existence, and he would not get angry at a nobody. That was really too much for Ling Han. If he didn't like it, he could just wipe it away. Thankfully, a certain fellow is not here. Otherwise, you would have to be careful of your butt right now. Ling Han could not help but smile. The word dog could not be mentioned carelessly. What does that mean? Hiss, you can't be lusting after my ass, right? Pervert Luo Changfeng couldn't help but burst with killing intent. This guy actually dared to use his brain, he was really courting death. He snorted and said, since you insist on seeking death, then I will. Xiao, he hadn't even finished speaking when Ling Han had already charged over, and Ling Han had struck out with a palm strike that blasted down towards his head. Luo Changfeng was unbearably angry. Who the hell did you think you were? You actually dared to take the initiative to attack me. Go to hell. He pointed 2 fingers at Ling Han, and at the tip of his fingers was the shadow of a star, exuding an astonishing aura. Bam! The 2 of them exchanged a blow, and both of them trembled and took a few steps back. It was actually a tie. Luo Changfeng's face suddenly became very interesting. He had indeed seen Ling Han's powerful physique before, but that was all there was to it. In terms of battle prowess, Ling Han was far inferior to him, especially when he had reached the peak stage of the 3rd severance. Thus, he was even more confident that he could suppress everything. But Ling Han could actually fight against him. He couldn't believe it. More frighteningly, the ripples of the latter's aura were clearly only in the early stage of the 3rd severance. 3rd severance early stage, and he could fight against him. It should be known that he was a king among kings. Putting aside being invincible among his peers, he could suppress king tiers that were a whole cultivation level above him. It had always been him who defied his cultivation level to defeat others, but now, he was actually the one being defied. This was a massive blow to his confidence. On the side, bewitching Maiden Ro was also shocked numb. In a battle of equals, it was even Luo Changfeng who had the upper hand in terms of cultivation level, but the result of the clash was a tie. Then, if the 2 of them had the exact same cultivation level, wouldn't that mean that Ling Han was slightly superior? This guy was really too freakish, actually stronger than the holy son of a celestial king tier level sect. There was no need to fear ignorance, only comparison. The 2 great emperor tiers were both prodigies that dazzled the world. Individually, either one was incredibly outstanding, but when they were put together and compared, there was immediately a difference in superiority. Monarch tier. Luo Changfeng's voice was slightly trembling and filled with jealousy. King tiers could be invincible among their peers, and king among kings, in other words, emperor tiers, could be invincible across a minor level, and monarch tiers were invincible across 2 minor levels. In truth, the number of king tiers was extremely rare. Normally, only 3-star forces could nurture them. As for a sect, they would only have 4 or 5, and at most, there wouldn't be more than 10, and if it was emperor tiers, they would have to go to celestial king tier level forces to find them. 4-star forces would occasionally have such prodigies appear, but being able to produce one was already incredibly lucky. But monarch tiers? Heh, that could only possibly appear in top-grade celestial king tier level forces. For example, a 9th heaven celestial king tier. Though the Thundercloud Palace had a celestial king overseeing it, this master was only a 2nd heaven celestial king, and who knew how far away he was from a 9th heaven celestial king. There were 9 levels of celestial king tier, and every step was like reaching the heavens. But now, a young monarch tier had possibly appeared in front of him. Who exactly are you? Luo Changfeng asked darkly. He was an emperor tier, after all, so though he was shocked, he didn't panic. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Ling Han, just a mere trifle, don't take it to heart. How could he not take it to heart? Luo Changfeng stared coldly at Ling Han. Was there really such a freakish person who relied on his own talent and hard work to become a monarch tier? No, what was a monarch tier? That needed to be a 5th severance, but Ling Han was clearly only a 3rd severance, and could only be called an emperor tier. Since there was a hierarchy of king tiers, why didn't there be a hierarchy for emperor tiers? Since you are just a trifle, then please die. Luo Changfeng shook his arms. Golden light suddenly soared from his arms, and then turned into multiple symbols that stuck closely to his arms, forming a pair of gauntlets. He stood just like that, his whole person exuding a domineering aura that said, "If I can't do it, then who can?" Zai Bingyun had the supreme regulations that the Celestial King had bestowed upon her, and he had this pair of gauntlets. This had been used by that Celestial King of the Thundercloud Palace, and contained a sliver of his aura. Though it was only a sliver, it was enough to sweep away all severing mundane tears. When it came to Celestial Kings, they were always very awesome. Luo Changfeng crooked his finger, his disdain evident in his words. "Aren't you a trifle? Then I'll take you as a trifle." Ling Han chuckled. It was just that looking at this gauntlet of Luo Changfeng, this thing could be refined by the divine demon sword again. Awesome. In front of a Celestial King, all are ants, Luo Changfeng declared in a condescending tone. "Blabbering, take a punch from me." Ling Han charged out, his fists entwined with two kinds of source powers. This was enough to resist the aura of a Celestial King. "You overestimate yourself." Luo Changfeng smirked coldly, and also punched out with both fists. The patterns on the gauntlets lit up one after another, and the power of great Tao was boundless. That was an aura that could crush the severing mundane tear. Ling Han was a person who would become stronger when encountering strong opponents. His two source powers were limited by his cultivation level and could not explode with their full might, but when encountering the provocation of a Celestial King's aura, their might naturally increased. The two of them exchanged another blow. Ji, their figures both slid back, and it was once again a tie. Chapter 1830. This time, Luo Changfeng's expression really changed, and even his scalp began to go numb. He had already used Celestial King tier techniques, yet he was actually still unable to suppress Ling Han. This brat was either a descendant of a Celestial King, or he had obtained a supreme fortuitous encounter to be able to match a Celestial King's technique. His eyes instantly lit up. If it was the latter, then if he obtained it, he might have a chance to become an immortal king. How many holy sons and holy virgins have the Thundercloud Temple produced? A lot. Generation after generation, after the old, holy sons and old, holy daughters advanced into the ascending origin tier, they no longer held the position of holy sons and holy daughters. Instead, they became elders. But for almost an epoch, the Thundercloud Palace had not produced a second Celestial King. Why it was too difficult to become a Celestial King, and even a Celestial King tier force would find it very, very difficult to nurture a true successor. However, Celestial Kings truly had limitless lifespans. Even Immortals' tribulation could easily shatter them, so there was no need to fear that their entire faction would collapse if they passed away one day. Luo Changfeng was confident that he could reach the ascending origin tier, but to become a Celestial King was practically impossible. Therefore, he needed the Heavenly Tao Jade to unleash the fifth slash. If he succeeded in advancing to the fifth severance, then becoming a Celestial King was a sure thing, and it would definitely not be limited to the first level. However, other than the Heavenly Tao Jade, there were still some treasures in this world that could help one advance into the Celestial King tier. For example, the origin of heaven and earth. He looked closely at Ling Han's hands, and his heart skipped a beat. You obtained the source energy of heaven and earth. Ling Han was slightly surprised that the other party could recognize the Nine Heavens flame and the Xianin source water. When he saw Ling Han's expression, Luo Changfeng immediately became certain that he had guessed correctly. And when Ling Han saw the look of realization on his face, he also understood that the other party was actually just guessing. He didn't hide anything. He opened his right hand, and boom, a flame rose up. It was completely formed from symbols of the Great Tao. This is the Nine Heavens flame. Then he stretched out his left hand and similarly opened it. This time, however, cold air rose. This is the Xianin source water. Luo Changfeng had almost never cursed in his life, but right now he had a strong impulse to do so. How rare and precious was the source of heaven and earth. Even the majority of Celestial Kings could not possibly possess them, but a mere third severance cultivator actually possessed two source powers of heaven and earth. Is there any justice left? A smile gradually appeared at the corners of Luo Changfeng's mouth, and then he burst into laughter. Ling Han, oh Ling Han, you are really my lucky star. Ling Han also laughed and said, are you trying to say that I came all the way here just to give you two strands of heaven and earth's essence? Is that not the case? Luo Changfeng asked proudly. He was now sure that Ling Han was definitely not the heir of a celestial king tier force. Otherwise, which celestial king would allow their disciple to possess two source powers of the heaven and earth? Since that was the case, what right did Ling Han have to rival celestial kings? Did he really think that he could do whatever he wanted just because he had two source powers of the heaven and earth? Ling Han shook his head and said, in your dreams. Oh, then what about me as well? Zai Bingyun's voice rang out. Her figure also appeared lightly, holding a sword in her right hand that was as bright as autumn water. Luo Changfeng frowned slightly, but immediately relaxed. He had now guessed that the reason Zai Bingyun had told him about the mountain treasure was actually because she was targeting Ling Han and wanted to use him to deal with Ling Han. But to be honest, though his words were filled with confidence, he was similarly filled with wariness towards Ling Han. If he joined forces with Zai Bingyun, then with the combined abilities of two great celestial kings, they would definitely be able to achieve victory. Ling Han's eyes swept over, and his killing intent instantly blazed as he stared at Zai Bingyun. I want the 9 heavens flame, Luo Changfeng said. Sure. Zai Bingyun nodded, and the two of them instantly formed an alliance. One wanted the 9 heavens flame, and the other wanted the Xianin source water. They also knew that with the other's existence, they could not possibly monopolize two source powers of the heaven and earth, and could only share. However, even if it was just one source power of the heaven and earth, it was already incredibly awesome, and even the majority of celestial kings would only be envious. Those who obtained the source power of the heaven and earth would definitely become celestial kings, and those who did not would definitely die. Ling Han smirked coldly. 2 dead people, and you are still daydreaming. Luo Changfeng and Zai Bingyun both launched attacks at Ling Han at the same time, one on the left and one on the right. Though they had not joined forces before as emperor tiers, they only needed a single look to understand each other's intentions, and their cooperation was seamless. Ling Han was going to face 2 great emperor tiers at the same time. The empress did not move. Though she was an emperor tier, there was a gap of a minor level between them, and she could not be of much help to Ling Han. It was better for her to stay on the sidelines obediently, so as not to cause trouble for Ling Han. Meanwhile, bewitching Maiden Ro was restless. She could just about stand against an emperor tier at the peak stage of the 3rd severance, but Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng both had celestial king tier techniques, and against this kind of secret technique, she could only hold a grudge. Thus, when she saw that the empress did not move, she also sat on the sidelines and watched. Ling Han was battling the heirs of 2 great celestial king tier forces alone, yet was not the slightest bit afraid. The 9 heavens flame and the Xianin source water twined around his fists, and he shot out one punch after another, completely unreasonable. He was going to use this kind of method to crush his opponent, who asked this to be his source power, so he was completely unafraid of exhausting it. But Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng could not. One had a celestial king tier Dao regulation, and the other a celestial tool, and there would come a time when their power would be exhausted. Which one of them dared to clash head-on with him like this? When the strong met, the brave would emerge victorious. Ling Han showed his full dominance, and Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng could only dodge his attacks. They wanted to wait for Ling Han to be exhausted, and then launch a vigorous counterattack to kill Ling Han. But how could such an attempt possibly succeed? We can't go on like this, Zai Bingyun transmitted to Luo Changfeng. Luo Changfeng was deeply convinced. At this moment, how could he dare underestimate Ling Han in the slightest? Instead, he coveted the 9 heavens flame and the Xianin source water even more. Though celestial king tier techniques were powerful, that was not power that belonged to them, after all, and there would come a time when they would be exhausted. But if they had been refined by a source power of heaven and earth, that would be a completely different matter. This person in front of him was clear proof. Not only could he match celestial king tier techniques by relying on two great source powers of heaven and earth, he could also squander them wantonly because he did not have to worry about exhaustion, and did not have to worry about running out of energy in the future. Suddenly, a thought flashed in his mind, and he said, "This is the hidden dragon mystery realm." Zai Bingyun was also a smart person, and immediately came to a realization. As long as they lost the blood dragon armor, the fire element of heaven and earth would be able to kill even immortal palace tiers. For example, even if they had celestial king tier techniques, they would have to wear the blood dragon armor before they dared to enter. The celestial king tier techniques were mainly targeted at the heavenly Tao Jade, and not the fire element of this place. Of course, it was not that celestial kings did not have methods to help them resist the fire element of heaven and earth, but something that could be solved with a blood dragon armor. Why would they need to do something unnecessary? The two great emperor tiers immediately found a countermeasure, and when they once again launched an attack on Ling Han, they madly attacked the clothes on his body. Ling Han's expression involuntarily became strange. You two should know that he was not wearing the blood dragon armor at all. If I told you, I was really afraid that you two would not be able to bear it. But Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng did not consider anything else at all. They thought that they had found the best way to deal with Ling Han, and did not hesitate to destroy him at all costs, determined to make Ling Han completely naked. Chapter 1832. Luo Changfeng was engaged in a fierce mental struggle. Going or not? If he wanted to leave, now was the best time. Even if Zai Bingyun was already at the end of her tether, for the sake of her life, a person could explode with endless fighting spirit. No matter what, she would be able to hold on for a period of time, and it would be enough for him to leave. However, once he left, the heavenly Tao Jade would definitely fall into Ling Han's hands. But it was only an instant before he made his decision and turned to leave. That was because even he and Zai Bingyun had not been able to kill Ling Han in their peak condition just then, so why could they do it now? Most importantly, Ling Han was practically a monster. He was actually unaffected in this mystic realm. Shua, a flash of sword light rose up and stopped him. It was the Empress. Though bewitching Maiden Ro was willing to stand out for Ling Han, it was more out of a sense of morality and repaying a debt of gratitude. However, she did not dare to kill the holy son of a celestial king tier level sect. Once Luo Changfeng or Zai Bingyun died here, it would be fine if they knew who the murderer was. A debt of blood must be paid in blood, but if they were dead and there was no evidence, then it was not impossible that a celestial king tier level force would kill all of them in fury. Besides, if it was because of her that Luo Changfeng was killed, then the purity sect would be razed to the ground. How could you reason with a celestial king tier force? Who would listen to you? So she just stood aside. Luo Changfeng's eyes swept over the Empress and he said, "Come with me, and I can strive to make you the holy daughter of my sect." Shua, the Empress shot out a flash of sword chi. This was her answer. Luo Changfeng no longer had the slightest bit of wishful thinking. He delivered a palm strike at the Empress, and his figure shot out rapidly. At this moment, escaping was the most important thing. The Empress humphed, and all 9 of her clones appeared. Then, she summoned 100 battle beasts of flames, and used the unique environment of this place to strengthen her battle prowess so that she could stand against a 3rd Severance Peak Stage Emperor tier. However, it was not a problem for him to fight Luo Changfeng for the time being. After all, Luo Changfeng was currently in a weakened state. Even so, with the enhancement of a Celestial King's treasure, Luo Changfeng could shatter a battle beast with a single punch, showing an invincible momentum. Fortunately, the environment here was special. If a beast was destroyed, it could just be condensed again. There was an abundance of fire element here, and with the addition of the flame control technique, the Empress had an endless supply of fire element. The Empress's strategy was also incredibly clear. She would stall Luo Changfeng, and when Ling Han was free, he would naturally be able to eliminate him. Bewitching Maiden Ro's heart thumped furiously, and an indescribable chill rose up in her heart, Yet there was also an indescribable excitement. Slaying the Holy Son and successor of a celestial king tier force, how audacious was this? But what a sense of accomplishment! Ling Han stared at Zai Bingyun. He had already unsheathed the divine demon sword, and similarly summoned 10 battle beasts. After advancing into the third severance, the strength of these battle beasts had also improved greatly. Each one of them was no weaker than Zai Bingyun, what more when there were 10 of them? And there was also Ling Han, 2 great source powers of heaven and earth, as well as the divine demon sword. With all these added together, how could Zai Bingyun, who was at the end of her rope, be able to stand against them? If you kill me, you will definitely be hunted down by the elites of my Zai clan. Offending a celestial king tier force, you will not be able to escape even if you flee to the ends of the world, Zai Bingyun threatened. In this kind of situation, she did not beg for mercy. Ling Han ignored her. He had long since sworn that he would definitely destroy this inhuman woman. Zai Bingyun put her life on the line, but if it was another person she might still be able to succeed, but how strong was Ling Han's physique? Even if she put her life on the line, he would not be afraid. No matter how fierce her attack was, it would only cause him some superficial wounds at most. Her eyes involuntarily shone with a ferocious light. If she had to die, she would drag Ling Han down with her. Zai Bingyun's body shuddered, and suddenly became transparent. Because the blood dragon armor on her body had already been mostly damaged, the organs under her skin could be clearly seen through the holes. Then, her whole person became transparent, as if she was going to disappear from where she was. Ling Han slashed out with his sword, yet she did not dodge or evade. Instead, she increased her speed and pounced towards Ling Han, her arms spread wide. Pooh! The divine demon sword pierced through her body, but a fierce expression appeared on Zai Bingyun's face. She clasped her hands together and hugged Ling Han tightly. To outsiders, this scene was extremely erotic. A man and a woman, both of them disheveled, and were hugging each other in an extremely intimate manner. Anyone who saw this would have their imaginations running wild, right? But in reality, there was not the slightest bit of romance between the two of them, only endless killing intent. Multiple symbols appeared on Zai Bingyun's delicate body. This was her true ultimate move, and also her final ultimate move. At the cost of detonating her divine fetus, she would perish together with her enemy. Under her firm lock, Ling Han could not even enter into the Black Tower, and could only take this attack head-on. Void Storm. Zai Bingyun uttered softly, and then, with a boom, her whole person exploded, turning into a terrifying frenzy of regulations. Ling Han was the next in line, and instantly felt as if his divine body was about to be torn apart, but his physique was too strong. After advancing into the third severance, it was almost reaching the height of 3-star pseudo-divine metal. He humphed coldly, and channeled the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Actively channeling it, his defenses would be raised to a frightening height in a short period of time, and he would probably be able to withstand even a blow from Ain's Soul Elite. No matter how desperately Zai Bingyun fought, she was merely at the peak stage of the third severance. No matter how king among kings you were, you might not even be able to break through the line of dividing soul tier. What more battle prowess that could match Ain's soul? Hong, the void storm raged wildly, but Ling Han remained calm and collected. Zai Bingyun's whole person was turning into regulations. After this extremely refined strike, she would also turn into Tao, and become a part of the heaven and earth. She showed an expression of disbelief. Such a blow actually had no effect on Ling Han? She was already fighting with her life on the line, so couldn't you at least suffer some serious injuries? But she was already powerless to do anything. Her delicate body shattered like porcelain, and her divine sense also shattered, dispersing with the wind. Ling Han was neither sad nor happy. Killing people had never been a pleasurable thing, but if he did not kill Zai Bingyun, he would be letting down the tribe of dwarves that had died innocently. He told Luo Changfeng that since he had started killing, he did not mind killing a few more people. Luo Changfeng felt all the hair on his body stand on end when he saw Ling Han's gaze. He gave a battle cry, and broke out of the encirclement without regard for anything else. He definitely could not be entangled by Ling Han, or he would follow in Zai Bingyun's footsteps. As the holy son of a celestial king tier-level sect, he would definitely become an ascending origin tier elite in future, and even had hopes of becoming a celestial king, so how could he die here? With this desperate attack, the Empress was instantly unable to block him any longer, allowing Luo Changfeng to break out of the encirclement, but he had also paid the price of being wounded by a considerable number of battle beasts. But at this moment he did not care anymore. Ling Han activated Lightning Flash and chased after Luo Changfeng. A look of humiliation and annoyance flashed across Luo Changfeng's face. In his eyes, Ling Han was a scum, but he was actually being hunted down by a scum, which made him feel extremely humiliated. "Once we get out of this place," he said in his heart. Ling Han had 2 source powers of the heaven and earth on him, and he might even obtain the heavenly Dao Jade. He would definitely not allow him to swagger away. He would definitely ask the elites accompanying him to make a move, suppress Ling Han, and seize all the fated chances. Crackle, crackle, crackle. His body erupted with the power of his innate lightning physique, and his speed was as fast as flowing light. Chapter 1833. Ling Han used Lightning Flash, and was similarly astonishingly fast as he chased closely after him. Both of them were as fast as lightning, crackling and crackling. Blazing white lightning blazed densely, and the strange phenomenon was astonishing. Banish, Ling Han stretched out his right hand, and pressed down towards Luo Changfeng. Luo Changfeng immediately felt a chill that made his hair stand on end, and he hurriedly gritted his teeth. The lightning on his body actually grew stronger again, and his speed exploded again, inconceivably increasing a little more. He was actually even faster than this attack from Ling Han. Banish missed its target. Ling Han was slightly surprised. This natural lightning physique was really a little awesome. Luo Changfeng had even dodged this. Before this, only that mutated celestial medicine had managed to do it, because that thing grew by absorbing regulations of lightning. "I'll give it a try, too." As Ling Han gave chase, the regulations of lightning that he had obtained from absorbing the celestial medicines surged in his mind. Before this, he had only used the celestial medicine to interweave and resonate with heaven and earth, and from then on quickly comprehended Tao, pushing open the door to the third severance. He had not had time to digest the 2 regulations that the celestial medicine itself contained. It was not too late to make a last-minute effort, because these regulations had already been refined by Ling Han. 3 days under the reincarnation tree, that was 300 years of comprehension, and it was enough to refine those regulations. However, while he had refined them, he had not used them yet, and did not know how to use them. He comprehended them. The light of lightning flashed. Actually, Ling Han was the most knowledgeable about regulations of lightning. Because as early as when he was in the small world, he would often shatter his own divine body to be tempered by heavenly lightning, and also observe heaven's might in passing, turning it into his own ability. Afterwards, he obtained the 9 heavens flame, and further obtained the Xianyin source water. There were 2 source powers of heaven and earth in his body, which was equivalent to having 2 celestial kings imparting great Tao to him unreservedly at all times. He was naturally more inclined towards these 2 aspects. But this did not mean that his comprehension of regulations of lightning was inferior. On the contrary, he had developed a great many mystical powers through regulations of lightning. Had he drunk so much heavenly tribulation fluid for nothing? Therefore, when the laws of lightning of the immortal medicine surged into his sea of consciousness, he quickly formed his own understanding after analyzing it. One had to realize that this stock of celestial medicine was most proficient in fleeing, and its speed was even faster than that of the large black dog. However, the large black dog could also teleport, and that was why he was able to intercept it. True lightning speed. Ling Han's eyes glowed, and then turned into a blazing white, as if his eyeballs were formed from lightning. Following that, his entire body flashed with lightning, and his figure began to accelerate. Wherever his body moved, there were still sparks of electricity left in the air, crackling. "He has a new lightning flash immortal technique then," Luo Changfeng shockingly discovered that Ling Han was rapidly shortening the distance between them. He was so shocked that he almost spat out his tongue. One had to know that this was a divine ability nurtured by his innate lightning physique. Even he could not maintain such an extreme speed for a long time. There was no helping it. His cultivation was limited, so he could only unleash this much power. However, this was already incredibly awesome. He was confident that no one in the severing mundane tier could compare to him. But Ling Han? This was no longer comparable but had surpassed him. Could it be that this guy possessed, in addition to water and fire, two source powers of heaven and earth? He also possessed lightning element source power of heaven and earth? Why, could you be any more freakish? His scalp was numb, but Ling Han was getting closer and closer, and was only a little bit away from entering into attack range. Luo Changfeng humphed and said, Ling Han, you have killed Zai Bingyun, so you will definitely be hunted down by a Celestial King tier force. If you further offend our Thundercloud Palace, you will not have the slightest chance of survival. Ling Han laughed loudly. You speak as if your Thundercloud Palace would let me go if I did not hunt you down. There is no great enmity between us, Luo Changfeng consoled. Ling Han scoffed and said, Do you think I am an idiot? You already know that I possess two source powers of heaven and earth, and will also obtain the heavenly Dao Jade later. With your greed, it is obvious that you would let me go. If I leave the Mystery Realm, you will definitely invite the elites of the Thundercloud Palace to deal with me. Luo Changfeng's heart clenched. He indeed thought so. How could that be possible? I swear on my reputation. What he thought was one thing, but he would definitely not admit it. Ling Han shook his head. Luo Changfeng, you are not even comparable to a woman. Though Zai Bingyun should have died 10,000 times, at least she still has a backbone, and even when faced with death, it is only a great battle. Unlike you, you are only short of kneeling to her. Luo Changfeng was furious. He was the holy son of the Thundercloud Palace, and it had always been others who kneeled to him. Ling Han, you are digging your own grave, he shouted loudly. Don't think that you can look down on everyone in this world just because you have the 9 heavens flame and Shenin source water. You are only at the 3rd severance, and any dividing soul tier would be able to suppress you. If a dividing soul tier directly came into contact with a source power of heaven and earth, they would definitely die on the spot, but against a 3rd severance, a dividing soul tier elite could crush him with a palm strike from afar. How could they possibly give Ling Han the chance to get close? Ling Han laughed loudly. Luo Changfeng, do you think that 2 great source powers are my trump card for being arrogant? His trump card was the Black Tower. At least, dividing soul tiers or even immortal palace tier elites could not possibly discover a clue. Luo Changfeng couldn't help but falter, an incredibly strong chill suddenly surging up in his heart. If 2 source powers were not Ling Han's trump card, then what was it? In this world, was there anything more powerful than a source power of heaven and earth? The only thing that Luo Changfeng could think of was a celestial king, but how could Ling Han bring a celestial king along with him? Wasn't that a joke? But no matter what, Ling Han did not seem like a fool. He clearly knew that killing him and Zai Bingyun would not end well, but the other party still acted without any qualms and pursued them with no qualms. You, who exactly are you? Luo Changfeng was really scared this time, feeling that even the Thundercloud Palace could not give him a sense of security. Guess, Ling Han said smilingly. In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through Luo Changfeng's mind. There were 9 heavens in the Celestial King tier, and every step was like reaching the heavens. This was definitely not just a saying. Even if they were both Celestial King tier level sects, could one founded by a 1st heaven Celestial King compare to a 2nd heaven Celestial King? It was unknown how far off. The Celestial King of the Thundercloud Palace was a 1st heaven Celestial King, so he should not only be at the bottom among Celestial Kings, but a Celestial King was a Celestial King, and could suppress all ages. As long as he did not battle to the death with another Celestial King, he would be an eternal existence. Could it be that Ling Han was the heir of a 2nd heaven Celestial King, a 3rd heaven Celestial King, or even a 9th heaven Celestial King? Otherwise, how could he be so confident? Furthermore, what celestial king would be willing to bestow two source powers of heaven and earth to his disciple? Only ninth heaven celestial kings, because they had already reached the absolute peak, and even source powers of heaven and earth were completely meaningless. He gritted his teeth and asked, "What if I am willing to acknowledge you as my master?" When he said these words, even his heart was ringing in pain, and he felt as if the sky had collapsed. He was a dignified holy son of the Thundercloud Palace, and he actually took the initiative to beg to become someone's lackey, reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1834. Being able to say these words, putting aside the fact that Luo Changfeng's face was burning, even Ling Han was slightly surprised. Fuck, was this guy really a holy son? He was really too shameless, wasn't he? There were things that people should do and shouldn't do. No one was willing to die, and Ling Han understood this. He, too, was afraid of death, but if it was to protect his lover and kin, he would step forward without hesitation, and if it was for dignity, he would rather die than kneel. This was called backbone. A great holy son, and a holy son of a celestial king tier-level sect at that, could actually kneel to such an extent? Utterly shameless. "You make me feel disgusted," Ling Han said, and struck out with a palm strike. He had already entered into effective attack range. Banishment. Luo Changfeng's face was red, but he was inwardly disapproving. He was a great emperor tier, a divine fetus that would only appear once in a billion years, so how could he die in a tiny mystery realm? He had an infinitely beautiful future, and his journey was the stars, the great self. Fuck. His vision darkened, and he had already entered into an alternate dimension. Luo Changfeng did not know what was going on, and naturally paled in shock. He hurriedly unleashed his full power, and began a frenzied attack. This alternate dimension could originally last for about a breath's time, but under his violent attacks, it was immediately shattered. Luo Changfeng charged out, and then an iron fist came crashing down at his face. This bit of time was enough for Ling Han to catch up. Luo Changfeng was greatly shocked, and hurriedly stretched out his fist to block. Peng, the punch passed, and his whole person was instantly sent flying back. After activating the arm armor beyond its limit, his battle prowess had also fallen to rock bottom, and he was no longer able to stand against Ling Han. Ling Han did not show mercy, and shot out another violent punch. Peng, Luo Changfeng was sent flying again, and this time, he was even sent flying. Ling Han used Lightning Flash to catch up. This was the strengthened version of Lightning Flash now, and he instantly caught up with Luo Changfeng, and then shot out a rain of punches. Ping 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 ping. Iron fist struck, and Luo Changfeng could only take the beating. His four limbs were all spread open, and his whole body trembled violently, spurting out blood. His chest was soon dented by Ling Han, and then it was forcibly pierced through. Blood spurted out wildly, and one could see the piles of bones and organs. Ling Han remained indifferent, and when he punched out again, he had already condensed the 9 heavens flame. With this strike, Luo Changfeng would definitely die. At this moment, Luo Changfeng finally lost all hope and gave up. He knew that Ling Han would never let him go. His eyes bulged as he roared, "Then let's die together." Blood dripped from his eyes, but they were immediately turned into ashes by the power of thunder that surged out of his body. His entire body turned into a blazing white, losing his physical body and turning into a ball of thunder and lightning. The innate lightning physique and immortal fetus were actually formed from a segment of immortal king laws. Right now, he was using his life as the price to detonate this segment of immortal king laws. It was enough to kill all severing mundane tears. Luo Changfeng had a hideous grin on his face. In that case, he would take one of them to hell with him. Very foolish and very naive. Ling Han shook his head. Didn't he see that Zai Bingyun had also detonated her immortal fetus? But what use was it to him? Could you be more kick-ass than Zai Bingyun? Even if you could, how kick-ass could you be? Boom, the lightning exploded, forming a massive spherical area of lightning. The lightning blazed densely, annihilating all the living beings within. This kind of shock wave, to say nothing of a fourth severance, Even a severing mundane peak stage king tier could be insta-killed. Even if they were not insta-killed, they would at least be severely wounded. How could the self-detonation of a divine fetus and emperor tier be simple? However, when the lightning had wreaked havoc, Ling Han was still standing proudly, but what made him speechless was that the clothes that he had just tied up had been blown away again, causing him to once again look naked. Luo Changfeng's body had already turned into ashes, but his remnant soul had not completely dissipated. When it returned to the Tao of heaven and earth, he was indignant at Ling Han. This kind of attack had actually not even managed to wound a single part of Ling Han's skin. What kind of monster are you exactly? In the end, he did not have the time to ask the last question. His spirit dissipated and completely returned to the heaven and earth. Ling Han's eyes swept over. Extremely far away, there were currently 3 people trembling in fear. When his eyes swept over, those 3 people immediately turned around and fled. It was as if their souls had left their bodies, and they ran extremely quickly. Lin Fang, Teng Xin, and Wei Nian, the 3 people that had fled previously. Ling Han did not pursue. The distance was really too far, and those 3 people were king tiers too, so how could they be so easy to catch up to? Husband. The Empress floated over from afar, and threw herself into his arms. Bewitching Maiden Rose stood in the distance, and felt as if her pretty face was burning. She was also speechless. In a single day, she actually saw Ling Han naked twice. Were you doing this on purpose? Ling Han was also very speechless. Who would have thought that Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng would destroy his clothes? Then, they hugged him and self-detonated, causing him to be naked again. Did they think that he wanted to? However, my figure is actually extremely perfect, so you've taken advantage of me. Ling Han was carried by the Empress, and did not even have the time to put on his clothes. He could only flash and enter into the Black Tower. In any case, in Bewitching Maiden Rose's eyes, this was definitely just an ordinary spatial god tool. The Empress offered a kiss. The man she loved was mighty and domineering, and her passion was like fire. She did not care about the occasion or the place. If she liked him, then she would show it. The whole world was filled with ants, so she needed to care about the methods of others. Being wrapped around by the Empress, who looked so beautiful and alluring, who could resist such charm? Ling Han was naturally no exception. Furthermore, he did not need to resist. This was his wife, a woman that he could love openly and confidently. After a bout of intimacy, Ling Han and the Empress finally exited the Black Tower. Actually, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had also interfered in the process. The absurdity and sensuality of this naturally could not be revealed to others. In any case, it was enough to make Ling Han's legs weak. After exiting the Black Tower, he saw that the cave was still not open, and Ling Han couldn't help but feel slightly guilty. Don't worry, I will not take advantage of the opportunity to steal the treasure, Bewitching Maiden Rose said angrily. Though the Empress was dignified, she was astonishingly seductive, and she knew what she and Ling Han had just done. This made her blush. Didn't you two know that there was another person present? Though he could not be seen, he felt like he was just inches away, so it was very embarrassing, all right? Ling Han smiled slightly. Even if Bewitching Maiden Rose wanted to steal the treasure, it was actually impossible, because the heavenly Tao Jade was formed from the source power of Earth over millions and millions of years, and was not something that a 4th severance could obtain at all. No matter what, she would have to be like Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng, possessing Celestial King tier techniques. Otherwise, it would be suicide. This Ling Han definitely would not say it. He only looked at the cave, and thought that he had actually only been intimate with the Empress for as long as a day this time. It seemed like it could rank in the top 5 of the shortest amount of time they had made love. True enough, he still had something in his heart, and could not let go. His distracted appearance caused Bewitching Maiden Rose to explode in fury. This was practically the greatest insult to the Purity sect. When he was with her, he actually became distracted, and was still thinking of another woman. Could you bear it? In any case, she could not bear it. Chapter 1836. 3 people? Ling Han was startled at first and then overjoyed. This damned small tower had made him worry for a moment. After the pleasant surprise, he couldn't help but feel curious and asked, "Didn't you say that the heavenly Tao jade can only be refined by 2 people at most? If you think 3 people is too many, you can throw away the extra," Small Tower said shamelessly. "Fine, you win." Ling Han shook his head and walked out with an infant in each arm. Actually, the infants of the dwarf race were not small, and were practically the same size as an adult. Clearly, they would not grow any taller after they were born. "Is there any way to turn them into normal people?" Ling Han asked Small Tower. "You are really ignorant," Small Tower scoffed. Small Tower scoffed. "The reason why this race is so small is because they do not cultivate. As their cultivation level increases, their size will naturally increase, and you need to worry about them." Right, he was looked down upon again. Ling Han propped his chin in introspection. Was there a time when he had not been looked down upon by Small Tower? No, definitely not. This Sundara Tower seemed to take pleasure in mocking him. Sigh, he had really never seen such a precious tool. It was too disrespectful to its master. "Hee, I am really sorry," Small Tower said with a fake smile, using a tone that would make one angry. Ling Han was sure that Small Tower and the large black dog were bad friends. Even their mocking tone was about the same. This also made him curious. What kind of scammer was the master of the Tower of 3 Realms to be able to refine a tool spirit like Small Tower? Had the large black dog learned bad things from that person? When Ling Han came out carrying 2 children, the Empress and bewitching Maiden Ro were both surprised. "You had gone in to retrieve treasures, so why did you come out carrying 2 little treasures?" Ling Han explained the situation, and the 2 women finally knew that this was the last descendant of the dwarf race. "Let's leave this place." The 3 of them returned the way they had come, and this place had also completed its mission. Perhaps it would return to normal not long after. Ling Han had only told the Empress about the heavenly Tao jade. Though this precious jade could be used by the 3 of them, and bewitching Maiden Ro had indeed been in the same boat as them, asking her to share the heavenly Tao jade like this? Ling Han asked himself that he could not do it. Their relationship hadn't reached that stage yet. Unfortunately, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had not advanced into the severing mundane tier yet. Otherwise, she would be able to use the heavenly Tao jade as her foundation to make up for her previous imperfections. Then, even if she had not struck the heaven and earth to enter into Tao, she would still be able to forcefully reverse the situation. If the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden wanted to take this step, she would need at least 100 million years. Even if Ling Han fed her celestial medicine every day, it would not be possible to shorten the time by too much. The step between immortal and mortal was far too difficult. It was a threshold that truly determined whether one was a king, a genius, or an ordinary person. A day later, they arrived at the Ascending Dragon Palace. There was no one stopping them. They left the palace, and the huge volcano appeared in front of them once more. Black smoke rose from it, and the air was filled with the smell of sulfur. The 2 babies were naturally sent into the Black Tower. The heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden just so happened to be very bored, so giving her 2 babies to take care of would also help her pass some time. "I will definitely return the favor of saving my life," bewitching Maiden Ro said to Ling Han. She was slightly indignant. This guy had actually ignored her charm all this while, causing her to even doubt herself. Was she really a great bewitching maiden that could bewitch the world? However, this guy Ling Han was too dangerous. Not only had he killed the heirs of 2 celestial king tier forces, but more importantly, he had left behind a witness. She did not dare to get too close to Ling Han, or she would be attacked as well. If a celestial king tier force made a move, what was the purity sect worth? Thus, she had to draw a clear line between them. Ling Han smiled slightly and casually tossed over a jade vial. Bewitching Maiden Ro caught it and asked, "What is this?" "Tea leaves," Ling Han said casually, and then walked forwards with his arm around the Empress's slender waist. Meanwhile, the Empress was slightly dissatisfied. That was the 9 revolutions charm physique, and should have been used by her husband to sleep with her and raise his cultivation level. Why should it benefit others? But since Ling Han was determined to do so, she was not willing to go against Ling Han's wishes. In any case, the lifespan of cultivators was long, and there would still be opportunities in the future. Even if bewitching Maiden Ro really had to marry someone, wouldn't she still be able to kidnap the bride? She thought unconcernedly. There was nothing in this world that she did not dare to do. Even if it was a celestial king tier, so what? Sooner or later, she would also be able to reach this cultivation level and challenge the strongest in the world. Bewitching Maiden Ro almost smashed the vial in her hand at the back of Ling Han's head. Though she owed Ling Han a favor of saving her life, she had also helped Ling Han and the Empress greatly afterward. No matter what, they were in the same boat through thick and thin. Now that you have obtained some precious treasure, you actually use a vial of tea leaves to dismiss me. You can't be like this. However, she did not throw it away in the end. If she threw it away, wouldn't that be an even greater loss? She really would not have gained anything. Just wait, she would immediately brew these tea leaves, and then pretend that it was Ling Han who drank it to vent his anger. Once she opened the cork, she would discover just how precious this vial of tea leaves was. These were tea leaves that had grown from the mother tree of heaven and earth. Though their effects were slightly inferior now, it was definitely a precious treasure for severing mundane tears. Ling Han did not want to explain. From a certain aspect, he was also filled with wicked tastes. He and the Empress advanced towards that massive volcano. With the 9 heavens flame and the flame control technique that Ling Han had grasped, not only did he want to obtain more blood dragon stones, he was also slightly curious. What kind of story did that celestial king have? Because they had been delayed for a very long time to collect the heavenly Dao Jade, Ling Han and the Empress were already seriously lagging behind. There was not a single person in their surroundings, and the blood dragon stones on their way had naturally all been picked up by others. It was practically impossible that any had been left behind. Ling Han and the Empress did not have such plans either. Their target was that volcano, and they were determined to do something big. Bewitching Maiden Ro did not lag too far behind, because she also wanted to go to that mountain of fire. The reason was very simple. She had also cultivated the flame control technique, but she did not have the Black Tower, so the time that she had cultivated it was naturally shorter. In terms of control over the flame control technique, she was far inferior to Ling Han and the Empress. But even so, she was able to travel a far greater distance than the others. One could not do as they pleased here just because they were wearing the blood dragon armor. The closer they got to the volcano, the more terrifying the fire element of heaven and earth would be. Even the blood dragon armor could not protect them all. After traveling for about 10 days, they arrived at a canyon. This was the area that was closest to the volcano. If they went any further, even the blood dragon armor would melt. This canyon was astonishingly large. It was said that this was also a treasured land of feng shui. Among the areas that people could set foot in, this canyon had the most blood dragon stones. Most people would stay here for a good few years, searching for blood dragon stones every day. Moreover, the canyon was also a natural barrier. There was an underground river here that effectively reduced the corrosion of fire element and could greatly extend the lifespan of the blood dragon armor. Thus, even if there were many people searching for blood dragon stones outside the canyon, they would still return here every once in a while to let the blood dragon armor rest for a while. When Ling Han and the Empress arrived at this canyon, they saw that it was like a market. There were many people here. They entered the canyon, and it just so happened that a group of 7 people was about to leave the canyon. And both parties faltered upon seeing this. This was because the 5 people were precisely Fu Gaoyun and his followers, as well as Fu Xiaoyun and Situ Xiaojun. Chapter 1837. Be Brother Ling. Fu Gaoyun looked at Ling Han with a strange expression. To say nothing of him, Qing Zhong and the others didn't look any better either. That was because Ling Han's head was completely bald, and even his eyebrows were gone. That appearance naturally looked extremely unharmonious. Ling Han rubbed his bald head and clenched his teeth. He had forgotten about this. Great, now his image was completely ruined. Heh, how's your harvest? he asked, changing the topic. Brat Ling, is your chrysanthemum all right? Situ Xiaojun asked with slight concern. Ling Han almost spat out a mouthful of blood. I'm only bald, so why are you concerned about my chrysanthemum? What's the connection between the two? What kind of thinking is this? Meanwhile, Fu Xiaoyun could only blush and pretend that she hadn't heard anything. She was completely helpless against this extremely filthy Situ Xiaojun. Thankfully, Fu Gaoyun spoke up in time and said, "Our harvest is not bad. The volcano eruption this time was very violent, and there were more blood dragon stones than the previous few times. Our luck is not bad, and it's a good year." Ling Han, why have you only arrived now? Qing Zhong asked. Though they had already cut all ties, seeing how enthusiastic Fu Gaoyun was, he could only speak up to express his gratitude. Ling Han smiled and said, I was delayed by some matters. He had no intention of showing off. Cheng Zhong instantly showed an expression of arrogance. You've even stumbled all the way here, you're really useless. Isn't this Ling Han? Another voice rang out. Bei Xianming walked over with his hands tied behind his back, and a few people followed behind him. Among them, one was the most eye-catching, like a sharp sword that had been unsheathed. Though Bei Xianming was a holy son, and was also clearly the leader of these people, the limelight had been completely stolen by this person. He was at the peak stage of the fourth severance, and had stayed at this cultivation level for who knew how many years. He had tempered his battle prowess to an incredibly frightening level, and that was why he was showing off like this. How gutsy! After offending the successor of an immortal king clan, you still dare to swagger around here? I really wonder where your courage comes from. Bei Xuanming's face was filled with mockery. He had been waiting for this day for a very long time. Ling Han looked at him as if he was looking at a clown. Do you want to know how much courage I have? Jumping clown, you won't be able to cause trouble for much longer. As long as Fairy Zihe encounters you, she will definitely take your life. Bei Xianming scoffed. Then, his gaze swept over Fu Xiaoyun, and he said, Fu Xiaoyun, you abandoned me for this kind of trash? Heh, are you regretting it now? Fu Xiaoyun's face was filled with disdain. She was unwilling to marry Bei Xianming not because she had fallen in love with someone else, but purely because Bei Xianming was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance and had no magnanimity. How could such a man be worthy of her? She couldn't be bothered with him. She pursed her lips and treated the person in front of her as air. Bei Xianming ran into a cold rebuff and could not help but be enraged. However, out of consideration for Fu Gaoyun, he did not make a move. However, Fu Gaoyun had given all the entry slots to his subordinates, and actually did not bring a single elite with him. This was really too stupid. Shaolin, are you itching for a fight? Bei Xianming turned around to ask that showy person. That person grinned and asked, Lord Holy Son, who do you want me to beat up? There's those few. Bei Xianming pointed in Fu Gaoyun's direction. This ex-brother-in-law of his always looked down on him, and he had spent so much effort to curry favor with him. Now that the marriage had been ruined, he would teach him a good lesson to vent his anger. Revenge. Putting aside the fact that he would not go to the territory of the Fu clan after this, even if they occasionally crossed paths, with the reputation of the lunar sect, what would the Fu clan dare do to him? It would be fine as long as he did not beat anyone to death. That showy person was called He Shaolin. He looked at Fu Gaoyun with a disdainful smile and said, You all come at me together. I will save some energy and deal with you all at once. Fu Gaoyun and the others were all furious, but the Fu clan had this kind of freak, and they were deeply aware of the strength of this kind of freak. How could they dare to ask for humiliation? They all forcibly suppressed their anger. Who asked Fu Gaoyun to save on entry slots, and did not bring such a freak? What, you don't even dare to fight? He Shaolin scoffed. What heir of the Fu clan? You're practically useless trash. You're at the peak stage of the fourth severance, and you have the nerve to challenge me like this? Fu Xiaoyun could not bear her brother being mocked, and stretched out a hand to rebuke him. Weak as weak. What excuse is there to find? He Shaolin said coldly. Could it be that his cultivation level was given to him by the heavens? Wasn't it something that he had painstakingly cultivated? Fu Gaoyun pressed down with his hand, indicating for his sister to not be rash. He said darkly, I admit defeat this time. Coming out to adventure, who would fight a fair battle with you? The fist was king. Who asked Bei Xianming to grasp the king's way now? Let's go. He waved his hand and was about to leave with his people. What, you want to leave after saying that? Bei Xianming could not help but sneer. Do you know the rules? Since you admit defeat, you should leave something behind. Fu Gaoyun gritted his teeth, raised his right hand, and slashed down with his palm. Blood sprayed, and his left hand was chopped off. Brother! Fu Xiaoyun exclaimed. Fu Gaoyun, however, did not say anything. He only stared at Bei Xianming. Is that enough? Bei Xianming laughed loudly. This idiot. Back then, he did not want Fu Gaoyun's bootlicking, and now he was suffering the consequences of his own actions. However, did he think that this would be enough? Since Bei Xianming had started this, he naturally became bold. He said coldly, not enough. This time, even Qing Zhong and the others were enraged. Chopping off an arm was not enough for you? What else did you want? Bei Xianming stared at Fu Xiaoyun, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a vicious expression. Fu Xiaoyun, the scene today is all because of you. Since that's the case, the one who started the trouble should be untied. What do you want? Fu Xiaoyun bit her lip tightly. Take off your clothes, Bei Xianming said calmly. Let everyone have a good look at your figure. He had already given up on the thought of marrying Fu Xiaoyun, and when a man wanted revenge, he was sometimes even more vicious than a woman. And Bei Xianming was precisely this kind of person. Fu Xiaoyun's beautiful face instantly paled. If she really stripped naked in front of everyone, would she still have the face to see others in the future? Even if she became a celestial king in the future, it would still be a humiliation that she would never be able to erase. Situ Xiaozhen was the first to lose control. She immediately jumped out and said, Are you still fucking a man? Come on. If you have the guts, then fuck me. I'll force you to death. Ling Han had originally planned to help her out, but when he heard her fierce words, his face twitched. Thankfully, Situ Tang's grandfather was not present. Otherwise, if he heard these words, he would probably spit out a mouthful of blood and die from fury. Bei Xianming grimaced. Even if he was given 10,000 guts, he would not dare to rape the granddaughter of a 3-star alchemist. He waved his hand and said, Shaolin, since young Miss Fu is unwilling to save me, then just beat them all into submission. Understood, Lord Holy Sun. He Shaolin bowed slightly. He knew that Bei Xianming's future achievements would definitely far surpass his own, so he was extremely respectful. Then, he stared at Fu Gaoyun and the others with a menacing gaze. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.